Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Please take a seat. Good morning. I have to get a little bit closer to the microphone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this event. Welcome to the European Economic and Social Committee that is hosting us today. It's a great honor for me to share this day with you. I consider you all here in this room to be the warriors of the circular economy. And today the question is, are we ready to pull up our sleeves? Are we ready to get our hands dirty? Are we ready to rise to the challenge that has been set by many years of policies and ambitions related to waste management and the circular economy? And yet, despite all of these years of ambition, there is, I think, one metric that continues to be very worrying, and that is the circular material use rate that somehow seems to stagnate around 12%. And despite the ambition of doubling the circular material use rate, it's not so much the question of we're at 12% and we're trying to go further. It's the fact that we're stagnating. It is not really progressing. Definitely not doubling, but not even progressing. And on my way to the event today, I was sitting on the bus, and I was actually facing backwards. And I was thinking that when you're in the operations of waste management, in a way you are sitting backwards. You are looking at everything that needs to be changed and that you cannot change because it's in the past. It's the road behind you. Whereas when you're in policy or you're steering the bus, you're turning right, you're turning left, you're choosing to go straight, that's the vision. There's space. There's a certain amount of freedom in taking decisions. But then you have to also manage, implement, and that very much is actually facing backwards. It's dealing with the legacy, the history. Everything cannot be changed so quickly. And that's very much what we are dealing with today. How to make that step change, how to actually implement the ambitious targets that have been set. Part of the answer is probably already a little bit in this actual event, which is being co-organized by 6 organizations, 3 on the public waste management side, with 3 organizations representing public authorities, with CEMR, Municipal Waste Europe, and Eurocities, and 3 organizations representing bodies that are trying to make the most out of municipal waste, trying to make sure that the circular economy actually happens, actually functions, with FEAD, with CEWEP, and with EuRIC. And I think that's already part of the answer to get this public-private conversation going around waste management in the interests of the circular economy. With that in mind, we will have a first panel this morning that will be more focused on municipal waste management, and in the afternoon we will be more focusing on actually how to achieve more material autonomy, more circular economy, more energy autonomy through circular economy policies, and the role of the private sector in that. But before we go there, it is our and my great honor to be joined here by Mrs. Paulina Degemek-Hack. She is the head of cabinet of Jessica Roswell, the European Commissioner for the Environment, for Water Resilience, and importantly, for a competitive circular economy. Paulina, please welcome Paulina to the fore.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I will also move this one a little bit closer. Let's see if I don't break the furniture here. No, I think this is. Hopefully, you can hear me like this. Okay. Great pleasure to be here. Good morning to everyone. I was struck when entering the building and the little coffee table outside the room, the buzz, the chats, the very high level of energy, and I think that is great, and I'm sure that's also going to translate into a very useful and very fruitful conference today. And I'm sorry that I cannot stay around and listen the whole day, because I think that would have been super useful, but we have colleagues from DG Environment participating, and I will make sure that I get a full readout from your discussions today. So very, very happy to be here, very happy to share a little bit with you the visions of Commissioner Roswell. We are still quite early days in the mandate, as you know, about 2 months in, with the Christmas break in between, but very, very busy days, of course, a very busy and important agenda, and really looking forward to sharing some of our thoughts with you this morning. I also very much hope and believe that this will be the beginning of a very good and very fruitful and very regular dialogue. I was very struck by the big variety of actors around the, well, I was going to say around the table, but rather in the round room here today. I mean, representing, of course, cities, municipalities, regions, and the various stakeholders in the waste chain. And I think that this is exactly the way we need to work. We need to bring the actors together, and we need to have a very good conversation about what to do to bring about this step change that was mentioned for the circular economy. And I will get back to that also in my speech. So briefly, the 3 points I wanted to refer to are, first of all, of course, the topic today is waste, but very much placing that in the context of the circular economy, a competitive circular economy, in the title of Commissioner Roosevelt, as was mentioned, and that's not a coincidence. And I also wanted to touch on implementation, because I think that is an important part of delivering on our circular economy goals. And then lastly, as a third point, a few words around simplification. Starting with waste, I think it's interesting to, of course, look at waste as a resource, and I will get back to that in the context of circularity, but also reflection more as a, which I think we can have all of us as professionals, practitioners, as policymakers in our different roles, but also as citizens. And if I look back just my own lifetime, which is obviously getting longer and longer, so I was a young kid many years ago now, but if I look at my home country, Sweden, I also have family roots in the Czech Republic. I've lived in Belgium for 2.5 decades now. And it's interesting to see how in our societies our approach to waste has changed. And of course, I'm mentioning these 3 countries because obviously all member states, regions, municipalities coming from a slightly different context based on their history and everything else. But it is, across the piece, it's interesting to see how we look at waste today much, much more as a resource than we would have done only 20 or 30 years ago, and of course also very much how we as citizens are engaged in recycling and all that. So I think that's interesting to see how this is not only, I think, an issue for practitioners and policymakers, but something that really we all as citizens in our daily life can relate to. So as I mentioned already, I think the circularity dimension here is really, really important. If I take a little bit of a step back, the helicopter picture here, and I'm sure you are quite familiar with that. The Commission adopted last week an important document, which was the Competitiveness Compass, which is very much, I think, the vision which President von der Leyen also set out, I think, very clearly in her speech in Davos a couple of weeks back. Very much setting out the direction of travel, the North Star, if you so wish, for the European Union for the next 5 years, and maybe longer as well, because I think this giving a sense of direction is very important for our companies, for our societies. And as you probably saw, the compass has 3 main pillars, if you wish. One being about the innovation gap, one pillar about decarbonization and competitiveness, and the third one being economic security. And all that, this, of course, very much to be seen in a context where we know that Europe has a lot of strengths, a lot of things we are very good at, and I think we should not be shy to also speak about that. We are very, very good at a lot of things. But at the same time, the reality is, of course, also that we are lagging behind on competitiveness, on productivity. We are, the gap with other advanced economies is getting bigger. And of course, Mr. Draghi, Mr. Letta and others have written very, very clearly about that. I think the analysis are done and we know what we have to do. So the compass, of course, also very much let's say, giving a sense of direction, as I said, but also being quite clear on what we in Europe need to do to basically catch up and get our competitiveness going. And in that context, I think so the circular economy, the circularity, the work that many of you are doing in your daily activities is really, really important. Because if we look at the circular economy and circularity, I think it fits very well in the three pillars I just mentioned. It's a lot of innovation here, and many of you will know that better than me. Also, innovation that we should try to scale up in terms of waste treatment, in terms of waste becoming energy, etc. That's an important bit. We have the pillar about competitiveness and decarbonization. There also, I think, circularity is absolutely crucial. Obviously, by going more circular, I think this is something where Europe has and can continue to really have a competitive edge. And of course, it's good because it's reducing our climate footprint. If we use less resources in the first place, if we reuse the resources that we actually have and keep them in our value chains as long as possible, that is good for business, that's good for competitiveness, that's good for society, and it's of course also good for the climate and good for the environment. So that's the second pillar. And then the third part, the economic security. Now, I think that one is really, really important, and that is maybe the dimension that we spoke a little bit less about 5 or 10 years ago. And this is, of course, all linked to the geopolitical and geoeconomical reality that we find ourselves in. And here the idea clearly being that the more resource efficient we are, the more we can use our own critical raw materials, the better, of course. The less we are dependent on imports from third countries. We've seen in the past that it can be very complicated if we are very dependent on third countries for part of our energy, for example. And I think that's the important part of this dimension, of this discussion, which is really using our resources better, of course, making sure that we use the raw materials and the resources that we have in the EU, and when we need to import, because of course we are linked together with the world around us, then making sure that we then keep these imported raw materials in our value chains as long as possible. So that's why I think circularity is such a great example, because it really is not in itself the reply to all Europe's challenges, but really a very big part of the current discourse. And I think it's no coincidence that circularity has also been mentioned, of course, by Mr. Draghi and Mr. Letta, but also in the Antwerp Declaration, in the strategic agenda of the leaders, and of course, as mentioned, something that the Commission has really picked up on as well. Now, coming to the point that was made earlier, how do we then do to really step up circularity? Because indeed, the figure around 12% is what has been mentioned, and it's true that it's, the curve is not looking like this. It's really a relatively flat curve, and the question is then what to do about it. And I think that is something that we are really also reflecting on. There are clearly a lot of elements here. One is the issue of virgin materials being, relatively speaking, very cheap, whereas reused and secondary raw materials are more expensive. It's just the reality. Single market, I think, is important. We always speak about single market. We've done it for a long time, but I think in the area of circularity, as in many other areas, the single market actually does not function as well as it should. Many of you probably see that closer than I do and have more direct experience with it. We still have very kind of national systems, and maybe that is for good reason, because we also have regional, local difference that we need to be mindful of. But I think looking at the issue of how we can scale up the single market on waste, for example, but also more in general around circularity, I think will be an important part of the answer, as will the first point I mentioned, the issue of the relative price difference between virgin raw materials and secondary raw materials, and that is of course not something that you change with just clicking your fingers. If it would be that easy, we would do it. There has to be a business case. Business obviously need to look at the bottom line, need to look at their costs. So this is something that we clearly need to look at. Another element which I think is important is the issue of imports. A lot of plastic, for example, being imported from third countries, and that, of course, renders the recycling very difficult. Some of these plastics are toxic, are not really fitting, not following our standards, not fitting into our recycling models. And I think that's also something that we need to look at. This is partly a consumer awareness issue, of course, when it comes to private imports via various websites, etc. But also, I think, something that we need to look at and which needs to be part of the kind of overall strategic reflection here. So clearly, work to be done to move a little bit away from this incremental changes and incremental advances towards a circular economy and find something which is more transformational. We have, of course, done action plans in the past, but I think that what we need, and I think that was mentioned also in the introduction here, something which is a little bit of a step change, and something where we also, by the way, are very open to your views and your inputs and telling us what you think would make the biggest difference here. So that is, if you wish, the forward-looking. I think there is an important element also around implementation. Implementation of, first of all, existing legislation, also rolling out some of the newly agreed pieces of law. You will be very familiar with the EPSR, of course, the eco-design rules, which will be rolling out for various product categories going forward. I think that is one important piece of the implementation, and of course we need to get it right in a dialogue with the stakeholders. We have also, from the previous mandate, a lot of other pieces of relevant legislation that now need to be implemented. The batteries regulation, of course, waste shipment regulation, the single-use plastic, packaging waste. So a lot of pieces of legislation that are already or soon coming into application, and where we need to make sure that they are applied in a good way, that this works in practice. We also, of course, have some older rules that are still important, that we still need to make sure that they actually work in practice. The landfill directive, for example, making sure that we reach our 10% target in 2035. And I think this whole implementation piece is something which is very important to the Commission. It's important for my Commissioner. And again, something that we would be very keen on doing in dialogue, to also see, why is it maybe very complicated to implement certain rules? How can we help to make sure that this actually works in practice? I appreciate that sometimes funding and financing is an issue. That, of course, is difficult at an EU level. As you know, we have limited public resources at EU level, at national level. But it's maybe something we need to have a conversation about when challenges are linked to the lack of funding to invest in new infrastructures, for example. So I think the kind of implementation piece is something that is really, really important. And again, let's see together how we can make the already existing rules and the very soon coming into force rules work as well as possible on the ground. So that was my second point. Then turning to the third point, which I think is quite linked to implementation, and that is simplification. And you've heard a lot about it in recent weeks. It is something which this Commission is very committed to. It's of course also linked to what I was mentioning earlier about the fact that that Europe is, in certain aspects, lagging behind. And it is being pointed out to us that part of the challenge can be that European rules tend to be quite detailed, quite prescriptive, a lot of them. I think there's also an issue, of course, of having the EU frameworks, which then, at least in theory, should be replacing national rules. But obviously what you will often find is that you have the EU framework and then maybe you also have national rules. And I'm saying that because I think when we speak about simplification, it's important to also look at it as a collective effort. The Commission clearly can and shall make its part, but it's also something to discuss with the co-legislators in our legislative processes. We know that sometimes, late night in the trilogues, it does not necessarily adds simplification. It usually adds a little bit of complexity. We need to be mindful of that, but also, of course, working with member states so that they also look at their national systems for permitting, for example, which, of course, has a clear EU dimension, but at the same time also is a matter of national administrative capacity and all the rest of it. So simplification, I think, is very, very important. I will see three layers of it, if you wish. One, and I referred to it already, is clearly about existing rules and how we implement them. There is also, I think, importantly in the area of environment, but incidentally also very important in the area I came from earlier, financial services, the very high level of implementing delegated acts, which of course is useful in the sense that we cannot have in our framework legislation all the details, so it makes sense to have a secondary level, but at the same time, of course, we also see that this leads to a very high number of legal acts, and sometimes then again, not always helpful to make things as simple, as straightforward as possible. So something that we would want to do is clearly also when developing these very important delegated implementing acts, that we there also at that level, so to speak, are mindful of making rules as useful and as simple and kind of usable and practicable as possible. And then, of course, the third layer, the third leg of this going forward, where if there will be new legislation, and we will be doing a Circular Economy Act in 2026, so there may be bits and pieces where we need new legislation to also reach this transformational change that I was referring to earlier. But when doing so, we would want to be very mindful of the impact, doing a thorough impact assessment, and again, very much have this dialogue with stakeholders like yourselves, of course, with the member states, with European Parliament, and just make sure that we prepare things properly and make them as simple and as implementable as possible. Very importantly, of course, simplification for us does not mean deregulation. In the area of, that you know well, in the area of environment, we have high standards in Europe. I think we're all very happy and proud of our high standards. We want to have clean air, clean water, where, by the way, we still have some way to go there. Unfortunately, we need clean and fertile soil. We want our kids to live in a healthy environment. So that is really, really important. But I'm convinced that within this kind of world of keeping high environmental standards, keeping high protection for health, we can still make things simpler and more practical and operational for all those that need to apply those rules. And again, all of you in this room know this better in terms of the practical daily work than I do. I think I will leave it at that. Again, very happy to have had the opportunity to start this dialogue today, and really looking forward to a very good and very fruitful cooperation. We are here to listen to you. We are here to learn from you. So really looking forward to that. And I will leave it at that, and thanks a lot.
So Paulina will need to leave in the next couple of minutes, but I think we have time, if you would like, for maybe one, maximum two questions if they're not too long. I can maybe just put one to you. Obviously, you have the idea of a competitive circular economy in your mandate, let's say, and you touched upon two things. One is the competition of secondary raw materials with virgin, and the price gaps there. The other thing that you mentioned was the imports of recycled materials, but there's also something else, which is the imports of finished products. And there are some pretty high requirements on at least some products in Europe in terms of recycled content, i.e. how much circular economy do they contain? That's a pretty difficult thing to check. So do you have any ideas, creative ideas, on how you could address these 2 points, one on the imports of finished products and one on the balance between secondary and virgin?
I was hoping that you were going to give me the answers. No, I mean, I think these are clearly things that we are looking at, and they're not easy, because if they would have been easy, we would, I think, our predecessors would have found solutions already. I think when it comes to the imported products, there are clearly issues around market surveillance, which I think needs to and could be stepped up. I know it's only part of the answer, because it's not realistic to think that market surveillance would have the capacities to check everything that's imported. But I think that is at least part of the answer, that we need to try to scrutinize better what enters our market. You could look at the role of customs, for example. This is an uphill battle, that's very clear. But I think that at least market surveillance would be, for me, be part of the answer there. Now, on the kind of price gap between virgin and secondary raw material, I mean, that one is it's a complicated one. I mean, you could I mean, some people would argue that if you take a more long-term perspective on this, notably in light of the geopolitical and geostrategic situation, that it may actually be worthwhile to pay the premium for the more expensive secondary raw material, because you have certainty that they will remain in supply, whereas there is a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. But clearly, that's not an answer that maybe will kind of take a business financing decision, purchasing decision here and now. So I think this is something that we still need to really look at. And again, we are very open to get input on this. I mean, could one be looking at, for example, public procurement rules? Could one be looking at, we have, of course, recycling targets for some product groups. It is something we need to look at also, across more sectors. I think these are probably questions that we need to ask ourselves. And again, very happy to continue the dialogue about that.
Thank you. You mentioned the Competitiveness Compass, where it was also announced the Competitiveness Fund. And also you mentioned the issue and the problem of financing circular economy. Do you think there could be the possibility to have a budget line in the Competitiveness Fund for circular economy?
Yes.
Ioana Ioncheva from the Bulgarian Recycling and Recovery Association. I have a question. Do you foresee to have a quota for recycled paper, as you now have for the PET material included in new products?
So, good morning. Hello. Unico from the Dutch Waste Management Association. Do you know actually what the price cap is in millions of euros? I made the calculation myself. I think it's like 1.5 billion euros maybe for plastics. The urgency is very high to do something actually, not to talk anymore, but to give the money to the recyclers so that we can really complete the circular business model. So I really expect the Commission within the coming 3 months to come up with a proposal. We cannot wait. But I was wondering, do you know actually yourself what the gap is in millions of euros between virgin and secondary raw materials?
Okay, very briefly, and thank you for the question. I think with the issue of funding, indeed, I mentioned it myself because it is a big one. Clearly, in terms of the exact setup of the competitiveness fund, and of course this links directly to the next EU budget, the next multi-annual financial framework, which you would be very surprised if I would say that I would be preempting here in this discussion here. I think this is a conversation which, of course, will need to be had. I think from our perspective, from the perspective of my commissioner, we would clearly be very interested and kind of trying to make sure that, of course, our priorities like circularity, like water and others are reflected in the next EU budget. But obviously, again, this is a complicated conversation, as we know, and a lot of competing demands. But I think it's well recognized from our side that there is a financing gap here. Now, on the issue of targets, additional targets, I think it's true. I mean, I don't want to take a position on that, because it is we clearly have, of course, targets already in some sectors, targets that will come into application soon, and I think that's something we need to look at. But I wouldn't want to comment on individual products or sectors. Now, on the issue of the gap, I mean, I don't have an exact figure. I guess that always also depends a little bit how you count. But in any case, it is big, and you mentioned some figures yourself. I didn't fully get whether you expected a proposal on funding for the Commission or just a general proposal. But I think the funding issue here is indeed very, very big, and something that we need to look at. At the same time, we also know that public funding is scarce at EU level, at national level. So I think we also need to be kind of a bit creative when we think about how we can mobilize finance. But the issue of, I think, financing and funding is very much on our table. I think I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paulina, for having been with us. I know you have a busy agenda, so please, you can move on with your other chores of the day, and I hope that you got something at least out of this brief exchange, and good luck for for the next few years. So we've already been talking quite a lot about implementation. I mean, that is the word of the day. And so we will get started straight away, rolling up our sleeves, going to the municipal level. I would like to introduce then our first panel. We will start with a series of short presentations, also to give you a sense of context as to where each of these players is located in Europe and the kind of very specific local challenges they may be facing. And then we'll open up with a broader conversation. Please join me then. I would like to introduce Marek Kabaczynski. He is the director of Krakow Public Waste Management and also a member of Municipal Waste Europe. We have Orsa, I think, Orren Wikström. She is the regional councillor at the region of Västerbotten in Sweden and a member of CEMR. Right Pihelgas, he's a member of Järva Rural Municipality Council and Deputy Director of the Association of Estonian Cities and Municipalities and a member of CEMR. Benedita Chavez, Director of Innovation and Development at LIPOR, the Association for Sustainable Waste Management of Greater Porto and a member of Municipal Waste Europe. And Hervart Wilms, the Managing Director for Remondis Sustainable Services, although I think his title just very recently changed, but still with Remondis, and a Vice President of FEAD. Please, a warm round of applause to our panelists. So, as I mentioned, we will start with a series of shorts. I think you're... Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, careful.
The European one,
Yeah.
Okay, that works again.
Voilà. Okay, here we are. So we will start, and I will hand over the floor first to Marek. We will head over then to Krakow. Can you please then give us a sense of your local picture, please, Marek?
Presentation. Yeah. Can presentation switch on? Okay. So I represent Krakow, the city in Poland. So I would like to show some old system waste management system. First of all, I will present the bio-waste system in my city, where a municipal company belong to the mayor of the city, 100% share belong to the city of mayor of city of Krakow. So bio-waste waste, we collect separately in my city green waste and kitchen waste. Why? Green waste we collect and process in the container composting plant. We operate the plants from 30 years, producing high-quality soil compost for the green area in Krakow. From 2017, we start collect the kitchen waste with the separate bins, brown color of this on back, and we send and we process this kitchen waste about 25,000 tons per year. It's a production of the kitchen waste in the biofermentation plant. It's our subcontractors, because we plan building their own bio-waste biofermentation plant. So in this area, we have the problem, and general problem in Poland, to find the localization site for the new this kind of the facilities. The local communities generally against to localization of this kind of the plants because of the smell problem, because of is the waste. It's advanced. They are against. Of course, we need the money, the funding for this kind of the investments, and the time. It's a long process to achieve the building permission for this kind of the plant. It's a long process of the environmental protection assessments. It's approximately 5-6 years to building from the decision to the end of this plant. But now we send to subcontractors. In Poland we have 12 installations of this biofermentation with the advanced technology producing fertilizer. Textile is the next fraction. Textile. We implement in 2015 this special program together with the Polish Red Cross to, what is the name of this program, 100% benefits, and we gather this textile directly from the citizen, from the door. It's the door-to-door services, and so we gather, we collect this textile, and the Red Cross voluntaries choose the best quality textile and send to the poor people. And so still the citizens of Krakow can left this textile in the waste collective points. It's working 12 hours per day, and during the Saturday it's possible to get rid this kind of the waste. And from January this year in Poland we have the special law. It cannot be collected this textile in the black bins, in the residual bins. The people in Poland now from January have to separate collection segregation textile at home. And because of that, we implement the new elements of the collective textile together with the bulky waste. You have the special program for the bulky waste in Poland, in Krakow. Practically, it's practical. Every month we collect the bulky waste from properties from the Krakow, and we encourage the people, okay, we'll collect the bulky waste together with the textile. But generally, of course, we share this with the needy people, but the rest is a problem to recycling the rest of this, the bad quality of the textiles. Now we have no recycler for this kind of the fraction, so we plan maybe in the future, but the amount of the textiles I can see from 2016 to 2024 we collect 1,000 tons. This textile is not the big amount to profitable for the new in my opinion, for the new recycling plant. So please, the next slide. On the left, you see we implement the circular economy in my city, and we collect separately. We have the two sorting plant, very advanced sorting plant, and we producing the plastic, paper, metal for the future to the recycler. But we still the problem is the recycler plant, is the recycling, and so we decided to build a recycling line dedicated for PE bags from the municipal waste. And we started this project two years ago, and we finished September 2024, and we start producing granulates from PE bags from my municipality, from Krakow municipality waste. So the capacity of this sorting of this plant is 10,000 tons per year granulates. So now we start the new economy, new waste management in the city, not only sorting, not only collecting, but the producing this granulates. And in this moment, we have some experience. We discussed before, yes, we are struggle with the no European pellets in the market. So with the problem is keep on the level the price for the granulates, and we the struggle with the decline of the production of the plastic in Europe. And this moment, this demand of the granulates is decline. It's a problem to provide this process. So we have to achieve the recycling rate about the levels 65% in 2035. This because of that we decided to building this recycling plant, and we decide to extend the sorting the mixed waste, residual waste. We have one plan for 100,000 tons per year, and we decided, okay, we should extend this process. Without the mixing, without the sorting, mixing waste, residual waste, we are not able to achieve the 65% of the recycling rate. On this right side, you have see the Sankey chart is all designed to new process to achieve in this process about 10% of the packaging material from residual waste. I mean plastic, maybe not paper. Paper is the rather wrong quality, but plastic, glass, and metal. And so, it's another effects of this sorting mixing waste. It's the decrease the amount and the storage, the deposit level waste on the landfill. We achieve about 20% all amount of the waste producing in the Krakow municipal waste. We deposit on the landfill. The rest we change to the raw material, to the elements for the recycler, or we burn in the incineration plant producing the building material. So the last slide, please. So the key challenge, in my opinion, in my company opinion, it's of course the time for the fulfill of this demand, 65%. 2035, it's too short, in my opinion, when we consider the new line, new factory, when we consider the gather the building permission, find the money for the new investments. It's too short, in my opinion. It's a problem. We have only 10 years for implement circular economy. It's not much money, not much time for this one. Of course, time and money. So we should consider and introduce extend producer responsibility. So we know the technology, we know the idea of the future development in my company, but we need the money. This recycling plant costs 80 million euro. It's a lot of the money for this kind of the process, but for the next investment, we need the next investment for this achieve these new goals. Needs money for this kind of this process. In another case, the people, the citizen, should cover this cost of the investment. Of course, we have the protection of the European market, protection or circular economy market against non-European countries, because when we invest European money, invest money from the citizen, from my city, we should stabilize situation for the develop of this kind of this procedure. So we discuss about the lack of the waste recycling infrastructure in this moment for the textile and some of the for the kitchen waste. And in operation problem, in my it's when we meet with this problem is the lack of the employees in this kind of the branch. So we discuss about the idea, about the development, about the new project. But you know, I have 1,000 employees, 700 is the blue-collar employees, and we have the problem to find this kind of the employees for the very simple job, for the cleaning the city, for operate this process. And in the future, this prediction of the situation is not rather optimistic, in my opinion. And now we discuss in Poland. For me, it's very important to calculate the ash from the for the incineration plant. We burn more than 2,100 tons per year. We're producing in the incineration plant practically the construction material. We cover these ashes to the construction material, to the road construction material, and we have the problem to calculate as recycling ratio. So in the end, we plan the new investment, new project, And so we support this decision on the special multi-criteria analysis to be sure of this decision, because it costs a lot of the money. Thank you very much.
Okay. So already you're highlighting a few points. I mean, on the permitting issue, which we'll definitely be going back to. Also, it's interesting to hear the steps you're taking beyond, you know, the actual aspect of collection. I mean, you're going into investments in relation to recycling, and you have a view on the market, which is interesting, I think, from a public waste management side. And then the actual issue also of the attractiveness of the jobs. We will then move next to the region of Västerbotten with Asha Agren Viskstam, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Let's see if we have some slides, maybe. Yes, thank you. As told, I'm Åsa Agren Wikström, and I serve as Vice President of the Regional Development Board in the region of Västerbotten. And next slide, please. Västerbotten is located in northern Sweden. It's the second most northern region of the country and home to nearly 300,000 residents. My hometown, Umeå, as you see in the middle of the map there, is one of the 15 municipalities of our region. We have around 134,000 inhabitants. So Umeå is situated in one of the fastest growing regions in northern Sweden. Our city has a young population, largely due to our well-renowned universities and a rapidly expanding market for green jobs. Umeå is also a dense city where essential services and recreational facilities are within a 15-minute biking distance, surrounded by nature and wildlife. Next slide, please. When discussing waste management in Umeå, we must begin with Sweden's legislation. Each municipality in Sweden is responsible for the treatment of municipal waste, including sewage fractions, latrine, and construction and demolition waste not produced by professional activities. Municipal waste consists of household waste and other waste streams with a similar composition. Our waste management services are financed by waste tariffs set by the municipal council. These tariffs are designed to cover necessary costs without generating profit. In Umeå, the basic waste fee covers administrative costs and the operation of recycling centers, varying based on housing type and the number of residential units. And additionally, a container and weight fee accounts for waste collection and treatment based on container size, collection frequency, waste fraction, and the total collected weight. A key component of our success is Sweden's waste hierarchy model. Since the 1990s, we have enforced producer responsibility for newspapers and packaging. The disposal of combustible waste was banned in 2002, followed by a ban on organic waste disposal in 2005. So thanks to our well-developed district heating system, initiated in the 1970s, waste incineration has become a highly efficient method of energy recovery. With strict regulations on hazardous particle removal and low greenhouse gas emissions, incineration has been a clean energy source for Umeå. We also have an effective food waste collection system. Household food waste is processed into biogas, which is then used to power municipal transport, including public buses and waste collection vehicles. As our statistics show, most waste in Umeå is incinerated, providing heating for our residents through the district heating system. But of course, despite those successes, we still face numerous challenges. One major issue is improving the sorting of plastics and fossil-derived materials to prevent them from being incinerated. Additionally, reducing hazardous materials in waste streams remains a concern. A particularly urgent challenge is waste prevention. Since 2020, the amount of waste generated has increased both in Umeå and Sweden. So the EU's eco-design and extended producer responsibility legislations are crucial steps forward, but we need to ensure that the polluter pay principle is effectively implemented. Producers must take greater responsibility for designing easily recyclable packaging, reducing material complexity, and eliminating harmful chemicals that disrupt waste recovery processes. Maybe easier said than done, but nevertheless. Another challenge is securing sufficient funding. We have heard that all through the morning already. Sufficient funding for infrastructure and communication strategies that encourage waste separation. Extended producer responsibility, EPR, presents difficulties for local and regional authorities, who often lack decision-making power regarding real costs and necessary equipment. Furthermore, regulatory barriers such as lengthy permitting processes for biowaste treatment plants hinder progress. Insufficient sorting and treatment capacity for specific waste streams, such as textiles and biowaste, can lead to reputational and economic challenges for municipalities. Additionally, regulatory constraints limit the secondary materials market, impacting the recycling of compost, textiles, and PET plastics. These barriers create economic burdens for both municipalities and public waste management companies. Next slide, please, the last one. And to achieve real progress, we must adopt a systems approach and foster strong public-private partnerships. In Umeå, we are building the Umeå Eco Industrial Park. It's a collaborative initiative where the municipality, waste management services, wastewater treatment, and the combined heat and power plant work alongside private enterprises. The partnership is developing a circular energy hub that already generates renewable electricity and energy. Future plans include the production of renewable fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, ESAF, and other eco-friendly products. Shared responsibility is essential for success. While producers must play a central role, regulations should be both clear and easy to implement without creating excessive administrative burdens for municipalities. In Sweden, we have a saying, "Det ska vara lätt att göra rätt." It must be easy to do the right thing. With continued collaboration and policy improvement, we can make significant strides towards a truly circular economy. By ensuring that waste prevention, recycling, and sustainable waste treatment remain at the forefront of our efforts, we can turn vision into action and make EU waste legislation a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maybe this Swedish saying is guiding the European Commissioner on the topic. I would like then to move to Estonia for our next speaker with Wright, who doesn't necessarily do it simple but always does it right.
Yes, hello everybody. Yes, if your mother language is not Estonian, then I'm always right. Yes, and that's my main key objective or promise in elections. So yes, Sweden example is very good, and it's something that we in Nordic countries like Baltic states look up and go learn from it. And our organization was 1 year ago in your region to check this out, and so. But you can. My slide is not so. I tried to bring as many facts just to understand where is Estonian. You can put the first slide, please. You can see the map, but it's yellow and green. Basically, we have 79 municipalities, and the yellow ones are cooperating together to organize waste management. The difference in Sweden and all other countries in Europe is that Estonian municipalities don't own like waste collecting companies, or some of them only own landfills or sorting companies, small ones. And we do everything by public procurement. We are not, like in Krakow, our cities are not organizing the waste collection or waste treatment. That is private sector. And this is a quite unique system in Europe, and it's not working very well. The open market in this sector is not working very well, and now we are changing the law that municipalities have more rights to organize. But overall, we have two tight systems. We have government and local governments. Local governments are autonomous, and they have like education, social care, waste management, heating, water supply. Everything is organized by the local municipalities, and the tax rates, 75% of the taxes go to central government and 25% to local municipality. And that is also a big problem for us. And I've been mayor of 12 years, and 6 years now I'm chairman. It's middle of Estonia. It's a rural area. Comparing to Sweden area, it's only 9,000 people. Just a little village. But to organize 100% like waste collection in rural areas and also separated the waste management collecting, it's quite a challenge, but we can do that. And also I am the deputy director of the Citizens Municipalities Association. All the municipalities are members in Estonia. And also I've been a board member of the Estonian Waste Management Center, I think over 15 years. So you can put the next slide. Yes, one of the, I think, the best thing that we have at every household where somebody lives or somebody's summer house, we collect 100%. We know where the waste is produced, and we know who is it, and we collect it. We have no dumping, illegal and dumping, and we know how much waste is to collect. Also, we have quite a good network of waste collection stations and environmental points. That's that all the Estonians like bigger centers or small centers where you can take your waste when you're building something, or it's like dangerous waste or something, or lots of papers or tires and everything. It's all covered in Estonian, and you can use it. So I think it's a very good like network of non-household. It's a household waste, but it's bigger, or you just sometimes clean. And also in the rural area, we have this like mobile collection station. In every year, we like collect like furniture or old, I don't know the English word, but we have the Soviet time roofs, whereas maybe somebody knows the word. It's very dangerous for the environment if you the asbestos roofs, yes, and that is a big problem now. And so we make this, the public sector and the municipalities make this like mobile stations. So, and also I think the key thing that to have like impact that you can change something, you have to collaborate together. And I think one of the things that the 27 municipalities are organized an NGO to organize the legislation side, be cost effective, and sharing the knowledge and also the best practices about waste management. You understand it's not only legal side, and also the organization NGOs making procurement in name of the municipalities. Also the organization can be a partner to the private sector. It's very important because 79 municipalities, only 1.3 million people, only 300,000 tons of household waste, it's not so big. So the open market, what the head of commissioner's office says, it's very important. You know, and we have this like silly situation that our like recycle companies who are making from plastic like outside furniture and everything, they are importing waste from Germany. But we have our own waste. So you can bring the next slide. And as you know, we don't have any big plants like recycle plants. The private sector, we have 2 years ago they opened like this biogas factory. It's collecting near of Tallinn bio-waste and producing biogas, and Tallinn and Tartu, what is biggest cities, the buses are driving with the biogas. But overall, we have these small sorting plants, nothing big. And I'm writing here that sometimes being slow is good, because you can see that last 10 years the technology has improved, and now it's the time to choose the best technology, to not be the worst, but be the second best, and achieve the goals. I think it's very important because there is countries all over the world who have make big investments like 10 or 15 years ago, and they're not still achieving the recycle rate. So also I hope that public-private partnership will be the next big thing, and we have to implement it, because only doing with the public money and not having the business side in your corner, it's not working. It's gonna only be on European money and local municipality money, because it's sometimes the cash flow will end, and I think it's very important to manage that. And also, we don't have any pollution responsibility or taxes in Estonia, and the local municipalities now, they funded 1 minute, yes, that they funded waste collection in your own budget, and also the people, I think, normal households pays for 250 liters, maybe €5 a month. So, but overall, also digitalization is very important. Nowadays, we don't know what the companies are doing with the waste. 2 or 3 times a year we have some reports, but next year there will be e-bill that you can every month see what we are doing, where the waste is going, and also the digitalization of the waste sector, collaborating with private sector, also with the people side, that everything has to be in one place, and they have to communicate the municipality, waste holder, the company was recycled, and also the collector. And that is the one platform what nowadays Estonian Waste Management Center is developing with the private sector, and if somebody are interested, I can send the contacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you're also bringing a perspective of different roles and responsibilities depending on where you are, what kind of municipality you are, and that obviously affects a lot your impact and your need to collaborate with other partners. We will then move south to Porto with Benedita. Please, Benedita, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. Can we have the first slide? Thank you. So LIPOR is a waste management association. We serve 1 million citizens in the Porto region, and our mission is to go from waste to resource through innovation and circularity, creating and sharing added value. Each word of this mission was carefully thought by us, and we have it for many years now. And this is truly what we believe in. So I think this is very important for us as a guide. We have an integrated waste management system, I would say a standard one. We have a sorting plant for packaging and paper and glass and metals and so on. We have organic valorization plant. We produce high quality compost, which is certified for organic farming. So actually the way that we thought about this infrastructure was not to be a plant for treatment, for bio-waste treatment, but it was a plant to produce a high-quality product. It's the same plant, it does the same, but when you think of it in a different perspective, everything changes. So we took a lot longer to have it at its maximum capacity, which we have now. It's 600,000 tons per year, but we have high-quality product in the market, which we sell at around 70 euros a ton. And then we have the incineration with the energy production plant, which produces 150,000 energy for 150,000 citizens. This is the basic. Then we have textiles collection and electronics, and I don't know, it's around 30 different waste flows that we manage. We have our B side that is there in the picture, we call it our B side, which is very related to biodiversity and everything that we do for the environment. So it's the other side of LIPOR. We have a strategy for carbon decarbonization, we call it 4M, in which we reduce, we have a voluntary commitment to reduce gas emissions based on figures of 2006. So now we are at around 38% reduction already. And we want to be net positive. So our B side is where we promote biodiversity. We do a lot of investment in vegetable gardens, in the forest, and river flows, and so on. So it's a different side of LIPOR that is very keen to citizens. Next slide, please. In circular economy, usually we tend to go from products to services. At LIPOR, because we are at the end of the value chain, we do the opposite. So we are going from services to products. We developed sustainable products made of the waste that comes to us. We have an innovation strategy for product development, which, I'm sorry, this is in Portuguese, I don't have it in English, but the idea is to go from trash to treasure. And we have all the innovation cycle in that slide, because we are certified in R&D and innovation since 2012. We need to have a whole context and a whole system that allows us to do innovation. So we do R&D for to add some knowledge, and then with that knowledge we turn it into innovation and added value. We have already 10 products developed since 2017. Our aim is to reach 15 in 2030. I think we will have much more than that. Some examples I brought here. One of them is Nutrimais, which is our brand for compost and products for agriculture in general. So sustainable products for agriculture based on organic materials, food waste selected at the source, green waste. Yeah, so we do the compost, and then with the compost we do some substrates and vermicompost and so on. We are developing a lot of products in this area, biostimulants, and I don't know, it's around 30 projects that we have in the pipeline for the agriculture. And then in the middle we have a bin that you can have in your house. So it's a design bin. We won a design prize in Paris a few years ago, which was very exciting for us because we never designed anything before, and we won the prize. It's a bin that we call Wally because it's meant to be on the wall, not on the floor. And there's a message in it. It's something that you can put in your house, in the wall. There's a bag in it. You can put glass or bottles or metal or paper or whatever. It's a way to make it convenient, to make it easy for citizens and to make it pretty. The idea is when we look at waste, when citizens look at waste, and if it's on the floor and we step on it, it doesn't have value. If we step on it, it doesn't have value. If it has value, if you want to value it, you need to put it up. That's why we put it on the wall. And it's you can customize it, so there is like a frame. You can take the picture and you change it as you wish. You can have a picture of your son, or you can have New York, nice image, or whatever you like. So this is a product that we developed from scratch, since the concept to the development of the parts, then industrialization, and we make it with our own plastic. So it's recycled and recyclable. It's around 98% recycled, which is a big challenge for the industry because the industry is not ready to use recycled plastics. There are a lot of non-quality issues, and it's a big challenge for them. And then we have another one on the right, which won the Red Dot Award prize. It's another design prize, an international prize, which made out of bottom ash from the incineration. So we are developing 5 different innovation technologies to use bottom ash and to really go from trash to treasure, because bottom ash is the trash of the trash. And you can make products for your house. This one is a device that you can use with the perfume for the house or for detergent for the kitchen. So we really want circularity to be real. Next slide, please. Just some KPIs from innovation. We won 5 awards. We have 97 million euros of tangible and intangible value, because we look at value in a broad way. It's not just the money that goes in, it's also the cost reduction and the environment benefits, so we measure a lot. Yeah, it's 9, but we already have 10 new products, and we have 1 patent and a lot of brands. So we also have a waste prevention unit that is working since 2006 to promote waste prevention within the community. We have a unit for supporting municipalities with their projects. They have a lot of difficulties implementing waste-related projects. And we have WASTE, which is our data center for selective collection in our 8 municipalities. Thank you.
So we're getting a bit of a spectrum here between the example in Estonia and the example in Porto in terms of how much a public waste management organization goes, how far it can go. Now we will be hearing from Gerard more on the other side, on the business side, interacting then with municipal waste management and with a specific focus on bio-waste, as I understand. Gerard, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much also for the invitation. So let's start with the first slide, because now we want to discuss how it works, to the cooperation between the European level and the local level, and perhaps where are there some problems and how can we solve it. Here with the example of the bio-waste. Next slide, please. The regulation in Germany, and now we are talking about Germany, is that we have different levels of German government. We start with the EU uniform law. That means more than 70% of the laws in our branch are coming here from Brussels. More than 70%. That means it is very important to look how works the implementation of this, what is the idea here in Brussels, and what are we doing on the local level. So German is a Federal Republic of Germany. That means we have federal law in 16 federal states with independent state laws. That makes it not easier. But at the next level, we have 400 municipal districts and independent cities. So it has to work over these different levels to come at the end to work. Next slide, please. So we have a regulation here coming from Brussels since the 31st of December 2023. It is ordered by law that bio-waste must either be separated and recycled at source or is collected separately and is not mixed with other types of waste. This is the European regulation. And in Germany, we have this this mandatory since 2015. That means since 10 years. And it is ordered that the local level must organize these collecting of a separate collecting near to the households, especially for bio-wastes. And bio-waste is the waste coming from the garden, not from the kitchen. No? So, how efficiently is this collecting and how does it work? Please, the next slide. You'll see a lot of points, and to show you how it works, you see from left to right several clusters. Clusters where you find different kinds of volumina that are collected in this cluster. The left cluster is there are living 150 inhabitants per square kilometer. This is, I understand that this is normal in your country, but in our country we have the other extreme on the right side. These are cities like Hamburg, Munich, Berlin, where more than 2,000 inhabitants live per square meter. And you see that we are collecting different quantities of bio-waste. For example, the highest collecting volume is 240 kilogram per inhabitant, and you see other cities where we are collecting only 5 or 10 kilogram per inhabitant. And it is, as you said, make it easy and make it comfortable. It is for the bio-waste collection. It's very interesting, and is ordered in Germany on the municipal level by the bylaws in the city. How often you collect? How often do you empty the bins? In summertime, in wintertime, in autumn, and so on. And if this is comfortable for the citizens, they accept these kinds of near household collecting systems. And as you see, if you have a good explanation, if it is very comfortable, you have a very high volume, a very high quantity that you can collect. Next slide, please. The white surfaces you see, these are municipalities where you have no offer of a bin, of a bio bin. That means 61 of 400 German municipalities, that are 15%. There is no possibility for collecting the organic waste. You have no service that is offered by the community, by the municipality. And in further 54 municipalities, additional 14%, you have only a voluntary organic waste bin that is offered. So the inhabitant decides, will I have a bin or will I not have? And you see that there's a big difference. On average, municipalities with a mandatory organic waste bin have significantly lower quantities of residual waste per capita. Where it is ordered by law, by the bylaws on the local level, we have only 130 kilograms in the residual waste. And where it is, where you have the possibility of a voluntary organic waste bin, you have 175 kilograms of residual waste in the bins. This is a very big difference. So at the end, it means, yes, we have a European law, and we have since more than 10 years a regulation for the local level, but indeed more than 4 billion tons of organic waste is burned in our incineration plants. And this is not a very good picture that we give as German. 3 minutes. I'm at the end. Okay. So next slide, please. What do we do in Germany with this collected bio-waste? This bio-waste can proceed to the highest possible quality by first utilizing the energy content, as using in a cascade. That means first we use the energy content in form of the biogas, and using the nutrient content, we do it in form of compost and bring it out to the rural areas where the farmers need these nutrients. So biomass is used to produce compost, among other things, which not only serves as a nutrient supplier in agriculture, as I said, but also promotes the build-up of humus in the soil. This is very important to keep the water on the surface, and humus in turn is a perfect CO2 reservoir. That means CO2 minimizing is an impact of these doing with the bio-waste. So if we burn more than 4 million tons of bio-waste, we do not have the possibility to use it in this cascade that I explained. So last slide, please. It is ordered from the European side since 2023 and in Germany since 2015. But the EU legislation is only as good as it is at its local implementation. And I think it must be monitored, and if we do not reach this goal, it has to be punished. At this moment, we do not have the possibility in Germany, because none of us is able to call the authorities and say, hey, you have to organize it. Thank you.
Maybe some people are sort of clapping, but I don't know if they're clapping specifically to that. Would be interesting to make a quick referendum, actually. I think here we get already a pretty diverse picture of the situation, and I would like to maybe start with a point that's been made a few times around this question of permits. Right, because obviously it's very difficult to implement any waste management policy if you don't have some kind of an infrastructure that allows you to actually manage that waste in a certain way. And I would like to try and understand some of the reasons behind the difficulties in getting access to permits. Are we talking here about issues with multi-level governance, a little bit as what Herat just outlined, all these different layers of rules? And does that somehow prevent municipalities from developing their own policies, their own infrastructure, or are there other forces at play? Maybe Marek, a quick one, and then Asha as well, please. Marek first. Yeah. Asha first. Okay.
Okay. So it's at the level of when you consider my system of this management. It's based on the rules of the control of stream of the waste in the city, because municipality is responsible for the recycling rate. Because of that, we consider the best methods of the management of this municipal waste, and we decide to control all stream of the waste in Kraków. I mean the waste from the household, waste from the business, but municipal waste, not the industrial waste. Because of that, we can calculate all system or plans, and we calculate the fee for the citizen, for the business. It's because of that we can plan of the future. The plan of the future, because belong to the city, we have the in-house procurement from the city, in-house procurement for 20 years. Now we have, after 10 years, we have the next 10 years. In this time, when we decided, okay, the city is responsible for the waste management, we can plan our business or project or investments, and it's a simple than the short time is during this 20 years is a simple to design or process. Of course, we cooperate with the subcontractors, with the private company. It's not the cover of the activities because it's not possible to cover of this one. We cooperate with the collection company which collect the waste from the city, but we manage of this system. In the future, for this system, we need the support from investment. 10 years ago, we have enough money and possibility to building the infrastructure of the sorting plant, to collection trucks, coordinate with the subcontractors, the private company. But in the new challenge, this kind of the new recycling rate, we need some new development, new fund, I mean EPR system dedicated for the very advanced technology. Now we consider not a simple technology. We consider very advanced technology for very expensive technology for achieving this recycling rate. In this moment, we compete with some non-European country in this technology. So we have the high cost of the energy, higher and higher. We have the high cost of the workforce, and we lack of this. What I mentioned before of this workforce, it will be difficult to obtain, and so we, and fulfill this investments and provide this project up to 2035. Because of that, we need the support, the legislation support from EU to stabilize the situation. So we are able to, we are ready to compete with the private companies, not the problem. But we should compete with the foreign countries and non-European countries, but in the same circumstances. Yes, it's of course it's better for us to develop and know more advanced technology, but we should be sure to stabilize situation. And when I mentioned before, when we invest a lot of the money from the people, from the state, we should provide this process in the normal circumstances.
According to the rules. But so here you're talking about more waste management operations being carried out by the municipality, let's say?
I think it's for me, it's better to achieve these all goals, to control, not do everything, but control this in the municipal, of course, not the industrial, yes, it's the municipal.
And in Sweden, also, you also talked about the problems with permitting, and so therefore the development of infrastructure as well linked to that. What are the main sort of drivers behind those problems? Are they regulatory? Are they linked to multi-level governance type issues?
Well, I think at the end of the day, our citizens want all clean air, we want clean water, we want a clean city or place where we are staying. And in order to get that, we need to, as policymakers, as politicians, also listen to our, of course, inhabitants, but not always listen too closely, because sometimes, change is also not always so, how should I say it, comfortable. But nevertheless, as you heard me saying, in Sweden we have been doing this for a very long time, and I think this is the main key issue, that it takes time to implement these things. And the changes, like now we are, for instance, I live in the city center, and we are sorting our food waste, we're sorting our plastics, we're sorting our glasses and everything and so on. And this is the infrastructure that is needed for people to be able to do right things. Because if the infrastructure is lacking, it isn't easy. And then it becomes an obstacle, and you have to take the car and go to the recycling center outside the city center. You know, it takes time. In order to do this, you need to shorten the permitting periods. It takes too much time to get some kind of sorting arrangement in place. We have been doing this for 30 or more years, and now it's up and running very well. And now we are taking the next steps in getting the municipalities, all energy plants, waste sorting plants, and everything together with the businesses and creating new opportunities. But it's quite an early stage, but it takes time to get the permitting businesses done. And that, I think, is both sometimes, policy making takes time for a reason. It's a democratic issue. If it goes too fast, the people aren't tagging along. And I think this is what we also need to address, because it's the democratic layer also. It's not only the infrastructure. It's about getting the people on board in doing these things. And most of the people wants to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. In Porto, I mean, you go all the way to products, actually. So maybe it would be interesting also to hear from you on how difficult it is in your local context to set up the infrastructure. Do you also have challenges with permitting? How do you respond to those, and what are the main drivers behind?
Well, we have all the challenges. It's really, really hard to do. But I would say I don't believe in one size fits all. We have very different realities. Even in our 8 municipalities, we have very different realities between the 8 municipalities, and they are all urban. So when you compare it with the rural areas in Portugal, the system needs to be very different. And it would be really necessary to be able to choose the best solution for each territory at its own timing and pace, and not having to wait for the ones that are slow. And yeah, so when we have we need a lot of flexibility here. The multi-level governance is a big constraint to us. It's too slow, there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's not agile. The permits takes, it's a very long time. I will give you an example, but yeah, I'll give you an example. For me, it's very important to have less uncertainty in the context. Okay, we live in an uncertain context, we need to adapt to it, but in our case, it's just the national orientation is slow and incomplete and inadequate. For instance, it took them 3 years to have a national waste plan. It was supposed to start in 2020, and we only got guidance in 2023. And then they gave us 2 months for the municipalities to propose an action plan, which we did. And then they took 10 months to approve it, to say, okay. Yeah.
With changes or?
No changes, just okay.
Just okay.
With some reservations like, you're not going to make it, but okay. Let's try it. So we were almost 4 years without any guidance. 4 years. It's a lifetime. And then we need to comply in 2030 with a lot of targets. So it's hard enough to match the treatment capacity with the collection growth, which is our job. Yes. For instance, we want to do an aerobic digestion plant, which cannot start and stop. It's something that when it starts, it needs to keep on going. And it needs some consistency in the material and the quantity and quality. And it's the same with sorting plants and incineration facilities. Timing and dimensioning is hard. This should be our focus, along with convincing the citizen to take part correctly, which is another very difficult issue because we are Latin people. People don't like to follow rules. You know, we have all the infrastructure. In my house, I have 6 different bins. I have door-to-door collection. My next-door neighbor has the same, but he doesn't do it. And it's okay. Nothing happens. So it's really hard to put it in place and to meet the collection targets and then to match it with the treatment capacity. So I would say there is this fear of decision within the entities that manage the municipalities. And in countries where the bureaucracy leads and governments are very centralized, it would be interesting for the Commission to create some instruments to make strategies democratized so that everybody has access to them. So the multi-level governance is really a constraint. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There was a comment or a question over here. Yep, I'll start here. Please, please introduce yourself briefly and make them short and sharp.
So Unico from the Dutch Waste Management Association. Good morning, everybody. This Congress is about vision to action, you know, so we need to get energized a little bit to have to get the breakthroughs. And my question to you is actually, I mean, I heard a lot about problems and stuff, and I mean, and the challenges, and I'm with you in that. But what are the top 3 breakthrough things you think which are needed and where Europe can help you to make a next step in circularity? I was also thinking about Germany. I mean, it's of course a very interesting case that you have like 60 or 61 municipalities who go their own way and say, nice that you have developed some rules in Europe, but at the local level we don't comply with them. It's very strange for me to listen to that, and I think it has to change. Also, of course, in respect of local specific circumstances. But can you please tell me 3 breakthrough? What can we do to go from vision to action, please? To energize us a little bit, no? Come on, yeah.
We have.
Thanks, John Paul. It's not really a question, and I will be brief, but I just need to correct the record. Wright said that Estonia was unique in privatised waste collection and management. It's not unique. Ireland has the same. But you also said it doesn't work well in Estonia. Well, I can tell you it works very well in Ireland. We have bio-waste collections everywhere. We have a high rural population. They're all getting brown bins now for bio-waste. We weigh every bin. We report all the data. I think we've the most advanced system in the world, actually. What we're coming up with next is contamination detection systems with cameras on the back of every truck. So highly regulated by the authorities, but carried out by the private sector and working really well. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your presentations. Loisos Afxendiou from Cyprus. I have a question. There are 5 presentations describing 5 different levels of waste management or different waste management systems in 5 different regions in the EU. I was wondering, how much does it cost in each of your regions for the citizens, for the services that you provide? For example, in Ms. Chavez's case, she does all the separation and her neighbor doesn't. Do you pay the same? In your case, sir, in Germany, the regions where only 5 kilograms per person of bio-waste is collected, do they pay the same as in the regions where 240 kilograms per person are collected? Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Françoise Bonnet from ACR Plus. So thank you for all these different pictures, and it's a little bit the work we have been doing since 30 years, comparing and benchmarking and trying to push for more efficiency and I would say also willingness. So I come to my Dutch colleague. I think that when we look at our technical report on benchmarking on different systems, what is certainly something valuable is the economic incentive. So you all know the pay-as-usual systems. It means for municipal waste and household waste, it is certainly something that it works. So instead of having sanctions, maybe give more incentives to make the difference to those who do their work well. Another recipe, maybe it's really important to have all the actors involved, so with their responsibilities. So we spoke about EPR systems, municipalities, so public authorities, but also public waste management companies. So all have to do the job. Another point, I think it was mentioned by our Swedish colleague, and I can refer also to, let's say, the NICE system in Lipo, one of our best member, I would say. It's also a long time that you work on this, and it's not that from a day to another that you have a beautiful systems. So it takes time, but you can certainly have a quicker answer and solutions by this economic incentive. So trying to really put the polluter pays principle as much as possible close to the citizens and to those who pollute. So looking at the EPR systems also. So yeah, welcome to share with you some other insights. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Jakub Bator. I'm from Krakow as well. And I'm representing here the Polish Waste to Energy Plant Association. My question is to you all, do you believe that since we are here in Brussels and we have this guest in the morning, does still the EU climate goals are valid, or are they helping us? Or maybe they should be recognized once again as something to rethink, to consider if they're really helping us to achieve these goals, to be more independent and more, competitive, or maybe not, or maybe this what we have still is still valid when it goes to ETS, for example, for waste to energy, or the CO2 goals is still is helping us. Thank you.
Okay, are you ready? Okay, so I think it might make sense to just kick this off with let's say the breakthrough solutions. We can imagine we have a complete shift, a complete tidal shift. There's money's accessible, policies are open for you, the avenues are clear. You just need to tell us what exactly you want. Right, what would be your sort of 3 breakthrough recommended solutions?
I think the main key point is that our citizens want to understand why we are doing that, why we are collecting separately, and what it's the outcome. They have to feel it. Because why I'm collecting separately, but I cannot see in the outcome. In Estonia, we also collect separately bio-waste and everything, and cameras and everything we have, but we don't have any solution. Where is the material? So I think the key point is to have like ecosystem that that, like we can say in public procurement, that you have to 50% of your materials have to be recycled, used again in furniture, in everywhere. You can see it in public procurement. We can do that. That is our freedom to do that, and also trust more the local municipalities. I think the situation in Portugal is like it. If the national government is not showing you a way, why we as local municipalities are always waiting for the government? We can act also. Let's take more responsibilities. The local municipalities can take more responsibilities before the government and also before the European Parliament. And our voice has to also be heard in the European Parliament. I think today the system is like from European to local level, and our voice is not heard. So I think to saying that in Estonia, in your case, that rural area, different systems, cities, different systems. I think the other German problem with the big cities and also the Estonia is that collecting bio-waste, the problem is that in a household, private households, there is no problem. If you're not separating, then you pay more. It's like that. But in apartment buildings, how you can say this is a problem to Estonia, that I'm collecting separate, you're not. So how we can change the people is that we are showing what we're going to do with that waste. So overall, in local level, be more energized, like my colleague said, and also take more responsibility. And also working together with our policies, be heard in European Parliament and also in national parliament. I think that's more thing. But the first important thing, the people have to understand why we are doing that. And everything has to be user-friendly. Thank you.
Okay, and visible through public procurement somehow, and maybe in the public space. Hervart, any extra breakthrough solution to add to that?
Thank you, Unico, for the question. Only 3, okay. I think first of all, we need clear goals. Clear, that means as clear as possible. That means, for example, increasing collection volumes. We want to start in every country of the EU with the collection of 10 up to 20, 30, 50, and it is the same goal for all of us. That means clear goals. That means, second, we need monitoring systems that looks how does every country, in which rate do they reach their goals. And the third is, what some of you said, we need economic incentives or punishing systems. And on the local area, you can define what do you need and what kind of bins, what kind of trucks, and so on. But the goals must be clear, and the difference you have to the difference you must have in your portemonnaie. That works.
Okay, and so we're beginning to touch upon this point that also the gentleman mentioned on the question of costs. And is everyone paying the same regardless of his or her performance, let's say, in terms of collection, in terms of recycling? Could we have a view on that? I don't know if we would start from Poland or Porto. Porto, maybe first?
Okay, so in Porto, actually in Portugal, the waste bill that citizens pay is still directly proportional to the water consumption. Yeah. So there is supposed to be it's going to change, but it was delayed, I believe, because of COVID. So suddenly COVID came, and okay, we're going to have a few more years for that. So what my neighbor pays or I pay depends on if he washes more or less than me. But yeah, it would be pretty much the same whether he separates the waste or not, which is an unfair situation, and it doesn't motivate anyone to do the right thing. So until we have the pay-as-you-throw system or the carrot and the stick or whatever you can call it, it's not going to work, because there is nothing happens if you do right or wrong. And people that are doing it right say, I'm doing it right and no benefit for me, so why should I continue doing this? I'm doing this for 20 years. We have food waste and garden waste collection since 2005, so this is very regular for us in big producers, but in the households, especially in apartment buildings and with our urban planning in our cities, which have very little room, it's very hard to implement unless people know how much that they pay. Probably in this room, everybody knows they pay a waste tax. Not in Portugal. If you ask a Portuguese person, they probably don't know they pay. They don't even know they pay. And the ones they do don't know how much. So it's hard to have an incentive to reduce the bill if you don't know what is the bill. And the costs are not covered by what is paid by the citizens. So, yeah, another problem.
So that's a national issue. In Poland, maybe a quick reaction on the specific situation in Poland?
So I explain some information about in my city, Krakow. You know, the cost of the system. It depends on every municipality decide about the creation own system. Yes? We create, separate 5 bins. We collect, of course. We have 2 sorting plants. We have composting plant, landfill. We have some system, education system, 4 person prepare for about 20,000 children, teenagers program. You have the special control department to control every properties, control the collection track. We have the special program for teachers. And so we start the new recycling plant, and we cover the cost of the incineration plant, and we have the textile program. You have this special program for the reconstruction and furniture, the collection, the bulky waste, and repair this furniture. And we calculate this cost. It's a cost of the providing of the declaration system in the city hall, and they cover the cost of the clerk in the city hall, supervise my company, and people in Krakow pay 6.5 euro per person per month. It's covered off of this cost, and we. This cost, this price, it's decided by the city council. And we are responsible for make the balance of this cost and income. Yes? If the situation, for example, in this year, the cost will be higher than the income from the 2024, and we calculate the new fee for the citizen. Yes? And so it's a long process, very similar in Portugal, because it's a long process of the approval of this fee, because the politician decision. Mm-hmm. It's not the decision of the mayor, decision of the city council. Mm-hmm. It takes normal 3-4 months, half year, and so it means maybe we increase to 8 euro, maybe 8 euro maximum, but difference to euro, it's a long time discussion. Yes, and according to the Polish law, it's this price. It will be. We have 4 methods of the calculation of the price for the municipality, and this municipality decide which kind of the procedure choose for the calculate. Per water, like in the Portugal, the same square meter of the of the house, and the numbers of the people on per person and for the household. In the Polish law, according to the Polish law, it's not possible to calculate by amount of the collection garbage. They eliminate these methods. Why? Because the people, it's of course avoid and reduce the numbers of the quantity of the waste collection, because they will be pay more. Yes, because of eliminate. The people pay not for the amount of the waste, not on the amount of the waste, for the system. Education, control, sorting, some system of the waste management.
And it's a comprehensive service.
Comprehensive, okay.
But because I'd also like to just also quickly here in Sweden, if you could just say a word about how you manage this question of costs in relation to performance.
Realizing I'm standing between you and lunch, I will be very, very brief in regards to this. In Sweden, we have been implementing the factor of weight of your garbage, so to speak, and this is an implementation that has been going on over some time, because we don't want people saying, oh, hey, that's too expensive, so I'll throw my garbage in somewhere else where not supposed to be. And neither go to our neighbor and put our trash in there so they can pay and I won't. So we need to also have this in mind when doing this. So we have been doing this and phasing it in, so to speak, so people get used to it. But the main cost is by the taxation. From the city in Sweden, we have taxation from the municipal level, from the regional level, and from the national level. So this means that we have obviously paying a lot of tax, but the citizens also want to know where the tax money is going, and this kind of infrastructure is important, and knowing what you will do with the waste, so to speak. So, very brief. Thanks.
Thank you, and I don't mind so much about lunch, so I'm ready to still continue this for another couple of hours. But I do want to finish with a final thought, because here we're very much talking about the business model, in a way, of a public service, which is waste management for citizens. Okay, and we've heard different examples and challenges around that business model, in a way, of funding the public service and making it equitable. On the other hand, we've also heard examples on this panel how much the public service is evolving and extending beyond, let's say, just collection. In the case of, for instance, right, it's a very, very limited scope of responsibility, but could be reviewed. In the case of LIPOR, it's up to going into the market, selling finished products from recycled materials. So we're seeing a huge difference here. And I was just wondering what you see as the right balance in all of this moving forwards to implement municipal waste management. Are we going towards this notion where the public service needs to have a much broader remit, because maybe citizens are more and more interested in indeed the final outcomes, and municipalities feel that they need to take that responsibility to go to the final outcome and go as far as to bring products with recycled materials onto the market, which is almost the kind of extreme case, in a way, the extreme scenario? Or should there be more a kind of a cooperation then with waste management operators, recyclers, all the rest of the chain to carry out that task? Because I think this also will quite nicely link up with the conversation in the afternoon, and I'd be really interested to hear your view, your opinion on that, and what kind of perspective you see in relation to unlocking these opportunities for municipal waste management. Can I start with Hervat first?
Yes, I think the municipalities have three different kinds of doing this job of services for their citizens. The first is you do it for your own. The second is you make a tender and you look for the best partner. And the third is you do it together, for example, in a kind of public-private partnership. But at the end, it is very important you deal with the money of your citizen, and that means you have to look for the most efficient way to do it. And at the end, if you have a truck, or if you have a sorting plant or an incineration plant, at the end is very important a good utilization rate of your capacities. And I think it is different if you do it in a small city or a middle city or in the rural areas, etc. But I think at the end you must find a way that is very help and useful to go, because you're dealing with the money of your inhabitants, and this is also in a political way. It's very important to find the right way. Normally, and this is our opinion and our experience, if you do it together, you find in the normal case you find the best way if you do it together.
As I just want to briefly take the possibility and the chance to serve you with some thoughts, food for thoughts maybe. I am working currently now with an opinion on the Committee of the Regions in just how do we get the public sector and the private sector more together, and this space in between. We have our regulations for the public sector and obviously for the private sector also, but this is not, I think we need to see it more a holistic point of view, even in regard to waste and all other energy fields, because we have here quite a unique opportunity to to reduce some of the legislations maybe, or regulations I should say, in regard to the public sector as well as for the private sector, and to these sectors to meet and find new solutions together, because I don't think we have seen almost, we are just in the beginning of new solutions in regard to energy, funding, green, all the transition that is taking place. And I think this is very important to continue working with and discussing, because the public sector has its own regulations and types of working, and the private sector has its own, and they are not compatible in time, because the timing is everything here. And I think here we need to see, can private sector maybe slow down just a tad, and can public sector, speed up a bit and find each other in this area. And this is what we are looking at in my hometown, in the Umeå Eco-Industrial Park. How can we make things speed up?
Okay, brilliant. Marek, a very short comment on this balance, especially with your kind of expanding role.
Yes, of course. So I'm present a municipal company, but we are a limited company. We're a capital company. We have the same goals as the private company. We should achieve the profit after the finish the year, of course. And so, because of that, it is possible to cooperate between the private and the public sector, but we consider the profitable of the process. Yes, if we have the profit from the process, we keep in my company, because this lower the cost for the citizen. Yes, we have the limited profit as the public company. We have no more than 6% of the profit from the after the year. It's a very low profit. If we have some problem, is that, for example, this process of the small amount of the for example, after bulky waste, we separate bulky waste, we chop bulky waste, but the rest procedure we send to the private, to the subcontractors. We have the subcontractors for some collection. It depends on the economic point of view. It's right, this private company is more flexible. It's better to adjust for the new circumstances, but generally we balance every year. It depends on the scale of the city. I'm from Krakow, more than 1 million inhabitants. The different situation is the small municipality, for example, 10,000, 20,000, 5,000. It's absolutely not the possible to create own company in the small municipalities, because we have the same law for all scale of the municipality, but it's different word. 1 million inhabitants and 10,000. Thanks.
Yeah, you have a critical mass that you can work with. In Porto, what's your view for the future? Are you going to continue, going for the market?
Oh, yes. Circular economy is about economy. And the environment and the waste sector sometimes forgets about that. And if it's about economy, then we need to look at figures in a different way and be flexible and agile to do all the parts of the value chain. Developing new products made me understand a lot more about the industry, and I realized there is a huge gap between waste and the industry. And then we have EPRs, which use average standards. And as I said, I don't believe in one size fits all. Then we have a company that says, oh, I want to have your paper and I don't need the quality of this and that and that. Yeah, but I can't give it to you because it doesn't comply with the minimum standards for the process that is in the average. And you have the opposite. You have the industry that needs plastic with a lot degree of purity, I don't know how to say this in English, that most of the waste management systems can't comply with. So that's why we are trying to fill part of this gap by reducing the intermediaries in the chain and ask directly to the industry, what do you need, and give them exactly what they need in that specific case and not in the average. The average is not good for anyone. If you want specific, the industry needs specific quality criteria for their situation, and their neighbor, it needs a different situation. So average is not good for everybody, for anyone except in an Excel sheet where it always works. So.
Okay, thank you. And right, a final word. I mean, you're in that very specific context where you're actually looking for a service. So how do you see that balance moving forward between your responsibility that might be changing, as I understand, with the new law in Estonia?
Yes, I think that we all understand that in waste management you have a chain. The first level is collect, that the waste will not be in our environment, and also the second thing is sorting. These two things, I think, have to be provided from the public sector side. First step of sorting. After that, there's materials. For that, you have to have a minimum of public-private partnership or only private. Because innovation about reusing materials is not coming from the public sector. Public sector is never inventing something new. So we have to, yes, we invent some laws and some taxes. Yes, I know, but that is not economical innovation. I think so, and for that we have to collaborate with private sector, and I think that is also the way for Estonia, and also learn from other experience. But if the circular economy is just depending on public money, it will never work. We can see that. Already there was a question about the environmental goals. You know what is going in the United States, they're saying 50 or 55 is nothing for them. So what are we going to do with it? It's only, in USA, it's waste to energy. Simple of that, no separate collection. What we are doing. But if the economy is not independent and profitable, it's never going to work. That's the truth.
Thank you so much. A warm round of applause to our 5 panelists. We just got started, okay? That was the local level. We will continue in the afternoon then with the panel focusing more on the economic side with the private sector, different waste management options, and we'll also have the European Commission and the permanent representation from Denmark. So I invite you to go for lunch. I imagine it's over here, and we see each other at 1:30. With us to discuss the next stage after collection and looking more into the business models of using secondary raw materials. We will be hearing from representatives from CEWEP, the waste to energy, from FEAD, waste management, and EuRIC, the recyclers. In a panel also then together with the European Commission and the Danish permanent representation to the EU. Before I introduce all the panelists, we will also be having a couple of introductory speeches to set a bit of vision, a bit of policy. We are talking about implementation, and I'm sure implementation will also be part of the vision and will also be part of the policy to some extent. But we will be first hearing then from Mathias Bach-Kierkegaard. He is the environment attaché at the Danish permanent representation to the EU. Denmark will be holding the rotating council presidency in the second half of this year, so it will be interesting to hear from Mathias on what he expects to have as plans on his desk during those last 6 months of the year. So please welcome Mathias, and over to you.
Thank you, and first of all, thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I think a presentation of me was already done, so I will jump straight to my main point, which is that the circular economy will be central for us to sustain our way of living, but there's also some challenges, and this is what I will zoom in on for today. It's also very important for our strategic autonomy. I think if you look to China and see that they already start to restrict materials, this sort of underlines that circular economy is not so much a nice to, but it has become a need to. Looking at some of the challenges towards the transition to a circular economy, the first one I would like to highlight, and I'm sure you've all read about it in the news, is the discussion on deregulation and reopening laws that was just agreed upon. If you talk about reopening existing laws, I think there is a concern in terms of uncertainty. If we start to change laws every second year or even third year, there will be uncertainty, and that's usually not what businesses are asking for. And it will also mean that those companies who have already invested in being first movers are no longer going to have that competitive advantage that they were hoping for. And if you look at the deregulation, which is another thing that is heavily discussed nowadays, I think it's important to remember that sometimes having high environmental standards in the European Union can actually be an advantage for European industries, because it essentially means that quality becomes a competitiveness parameter. If you only focus on production-related aspects, such as labor costs, I think it's fairly certain that if you compare to China, we would never be able to produce on the labor costs as cheap as they do. Another challenge that I would like to highlight is that there are short-term costs when we try to transition to a circular economy. I know that there's also a huge potential, but in the very short term, when consumers have to buy products, they will be more expensive, and that's maybe difficult to grasp when you are a consumer, that even though it's more expensive now when I purchase it, it might last longer and therefore be cheaper over time. And for companies, there will be similar challenges. So what's the solution to some of these challenges? I think we need business cases, proof of the concept of the circular economy. People in the Commission have said the same a lot. But when I say business cases, I think it's important to remember it's not just for the business, it's also for consumers, and it's also for member states. And I'm saying member states because when I'm sitting in the council quite often, and we are very sensitive towards the costs and benefits for member states, so there also needs to be some advantages for the administration. And that leads me a bit on to where we are today. And before we are discussing that too much, I think it's worth recognizing that we have done a lot in the last 5 years. There was the Circular Economy Action Plan that had 35 initiatives. They were addressing products throughout the whole value chain, and even though we're not all the way there yet, we are quite far. And that brings me to another challenge where I have to look a bit inwards. I have to look to us as member states, and that will be the implementation part. This is undoubtedly going to mean that we are going to be very busy in the capitals for a long time. And I think it's important that we get the implementation right in terms of making sure that it is business friendly. And how can we do that? I think an important part is to make sure that we harmonize the implementation across member states. And I won't really say much more about that, because I have a feeling that the Commission in the coming weeks are going to present their view on how to do that. So I'll stop there for now. But another challenge maybe to mention is that the narrative is changing. We have been focusing on environmental protection and competitiveness, and it has moved to competitiveness and simplification. And there's not necessarily anything bad in that. We have been discussing that, I think, for at least the past 25 years. In 2012, at least the Commission almost managed to reduce the economic burden by 25%. Then there was the European Council, or the Council of the EU, and the European Parliament, which couldn't refrain themselves from adding a bit of burden. And I think this highlights once again the importance that once the Commission has done its job, it's also for Member States and the European Parliament to really stay on track to make sure that the new laws that might be coming are as lean as possible. And even though I sound a bit negative about the simplification, I think that it can be great. I think there's probably great potential. Just look at digitalization and harmonization, and it would be interesting to know if you just did those two things, how much would the burden actually be reduced? So with all this negativeness, I think I would also finish off with focus a bit on some of the positive aspects. The first one is that circular economy is quite prevalent in the competitiveness compass. And I think it was very encouraging to see that now there's also going to be a focus on creating a market for reusable products, not just a single market for waste and recycled material. That means that we will probably see strengthening the hierarchy also further up than just the waste stage. And then, of course, we have the Circular Economy Act coming up in 2026, which I think is another very strong signal that there is political backing to continue on the path to a transition to a circular economy, even though it undoubtedly will be very difficult. And this should arguably address a lot of aspects. I would just highlight one here, and that is to make sure that we have a flourishing recycling industry in Europe. The first challenge will be to create the needed demand for the recycled material. I think that's slowly going to come as we see content targets coming in for different product groups. But once we have the demand, I think we need to foresee that there will also be other challenges. Some of those challenges will, for example, be the cost. It is typically more expensive when you produce it in the European Union compared to third countries. And this is for a number of reasons, such as, environmental standards, labor costs, energy costs. And I think here it's not about lowering the standards in Europe, but making sure whatever comes to the European market actually fulfill those requirements. And that leads me a bit to another challenge. Another challenge will be to make sure that what is imported is, as recycled material, is in fact recycled material. There is quite some concern that what is said to be recycled materials from third countries are in fact virgin materials, but disguised as recycled. And I think that this is something that's quite important to address. It's also something that will be very difficult, because it can be very difficult to enforce. And I think the final challenge I would just like to mention about this is something that most of you probably already know, given you're sitting here, and that is the cost of virgin materials are cheaper than recyclates. This is probably also going to be a challenge that needs to be addressed. And the final point I want to make, for now at least, is that we already have a great policy framework, and we need to leverage that further. So, for example, we can make end-of-waste criteria in the Waste Framework Directive. I think that would be great if we actually use that tool. We also have the eco-design regulation, where we can set quite a lot of requirements for products, and even set green public procurement requirements. And there is really potential as well to make sure we transition to a circular economy. So just to sum up, I think we have a good starting point. Circular economy will be part of the Commission work for the next 5 years. We saw that in the competitiveness compass. There are challenges in terms of short-term costs, in terms of deregulation, and particularly implementation and enforcement, if I have to look from a member state perspective. And then the final point is that we need to use the existing policy framework while making sure the Circular Economy Act is going to address the remaining issues. And I think that's it for me for now.
And Matthias will be part of the whole panel discussion, so there will be ample time also to raise questions with him. I will now then turn to Aurel Ciobanu-Dordea, Director for the Circular Economy at the European Commission, DG Environment. So we heard that you're working on something that looks like harmonized implementation of waste legislation in the EU, so really curious to hear a little bit more about that and how you're aiming to balance this need to somehow indeed push member states to implement existing legislation while getting them on board with some more ambitious plans and policies for the circular economy in the year to come. Not an easy balance to be found, but maybe you can tell us a little bit how you intend to go there.
We are looking for a dynamic balance. Thank you very much for the invitation to join you for this important debate that we always covet in the European Commission, to meet you, your organizations and your members. And so I'm very glad to be here. But after our Danish colleague who carries the name of a famous Danish philosopher and of a famous German composer, he steals the thunder with a Wagnerian, I would say, depiction of the situation. So what can I add to this? I would say a few things, also with an eye on the questions that you have proposed for the panel. I would say, indeed, there is a debate, as you know very well, and you witness, in particular those working on a more permanent basis in Brussels, about the continuation of the Green Deal and which are the parameters for its continuation. The pendulum, the political pendulum has shifted a little bit. However, the message, we continue, but we need to take some adjustment measures in order to, for the continuation and the continuation of the decarbonization effort, to support the a regain of competitiveness of the European manufacturers, European industries. Everybody thinks, continues to think, that sustainability is part of the competitive edge of the European economic actors. Indeed, simplification is an important message, let's say, that responds to some of the challenges of the previous mandate, and we cannot ignore this, and we need to factor this into any future regulatory initiatives, and this is what we have in mind also when we work on the Circular Economy Act. What can we simplify? What can we make leaner? This is why some of the interventions in the Circular Economy Act will envisage the transformation of rules that are currently set at the level of directives into provisions that would be regulation type, meaning that they will apply directly to the economic operators, and the member states will need to take the necessary supervisory measures only, but no need for further transposition. So, returning to the general political landscape, indeed, as Matthias has underscored, it is now a well-spread understanding, also at political level, which is relatively rare, that circularity must be part of the effort to decarbonize and must be part of the policies aiming the decarbonization of our economies and our societies. There is a growing understanding that because a lot has been done on decarbonization, but the measures which have been largely successful have reached a certain limit, and we are still not there. We need more interventions, and we need, among others, I'm not saying that this is a silver bullet, but there is an awareness that circularity is indispensable for the continuation of this effort and for the success of this effort. So how do we navigate on this favorable sea? It's more difficult than it appears at first sight. And also in the light of simplification. And we are having a syndrome here in Brussels, not just in the Commission, also outside the walls of the Commission. You have a problem, and 10 people with hammers strive to tackle the problem that they have identified. So there is an overcrowding of initiatives and the risk of losing the clarity of the landscape and what kind of solutions we are applying in order to achieve, to attain an otherwise agreed objective. So we will need to face this, and actually this is a challenge of these weeks and maybe of a few months. At the beginning of each mandate of the Commission, maybe it's like this. You have seen already an effort from the Commission to fix competitiveness and decarbonization and economic compass for the next 5 years with the adoption of the competitiveness compass at the end of January. A next step is expected, and there you will be able to read and understand more from our intentions also in terms of circularity when at the end of February the Commission will adopt another important communication, the Clean Industrial Deal, that will spell out more in operational details which interventions and what is the narrative and the vision behind delivering on the second pillar of the competitiveness compass, which is about decarbonization and competitiveness as such. So we will speak there about the Circular Economy Act, but also the contribution of what bioeconomy, for instance, can bring to decarbonization and to circularity. And we will speak there also about the contribution of ESPR and the policies in terms of clean, low-carbon products. And here we need to align the stars. It's quite challenging. There is a temptation to go only for ready-made solutions, to be rather narrow, but we need to resist the temptation to be maybe insufficiently careful, and we need to take a holistic approach to look at the life cycle approach concerning the footprint of different products. In all these, this reflection I am referring to, we are mindful of the challenges that have already been mentioned here. How do we, and this is of paramount importance to us, it's crucial, how do you reverse the balance of prices? It's an economic problem, difficult to tackle, between the low cost of virgin of raw materials and the relatively high cost of recyclates. And we believe that we need to address this through maybe also the abundance of supply, which is important, because if supply is abundant on the market, it contributes to the lowering the prices. Maybe we need to take a more creative look at the carbon footprint and the environmental footprint of materials in order to favor the incorporation of, for instance, recyclates into different materials. And we need to leverage a number of economic instruments like public procurement. Can we think in terms of a few simple and easy to implement public procurement requirements for a number of limited products and materials that make a difference for the European industries currently particularly challenged? We are aware that the automotive industry, the steel industry, the aluminium industry, but also the recyclers, the textile manufacturers, the chemical industry are also under strain. So what could we do through a number of limited and easy to implement by all the public authorities from the north of Finland to the south of Italy, from the easternmost communities in Romania to the westernmost communities in Portugal? They need easy to implement mandatory public procurement criteria that could also be used in order to create demand, including for recycled products and for other products and activities and services resulting from a circular economy. It's not only about recycled materials and recyclates, it's also about longer lasting products, repairable products and others. Of course, we think about, and I think extended producer responsibility has been mentioned here. We think about maybe a limited number of mandatory additional mandatory extended producer responsibility schemes that will continue to be managed nationally, but with requirements which are no longer minimal, but are uniformly applicable for the same product which is covered by the national schemes. There should be the same criteria. We are thinking also about the reform of the end of waste criteria. We are aware that this is an important, stumbling block and a problem in the current system for three reasons. Because you have regional criteria end of waste, and this creates obstacles even within the member states. You have national criteria but no mutual recognition, and we are thinking about the possibility of triggering in certain, or not triggering, but offering in certain conditions the mutual recognition of national end of waste criteria. and we need to think how the European system of end-of-waste criteria, the adoption of criteria at the level of the European Union, can be, in a way, simplified and accelerated. And of course, science and collaboration with industry is important, but if this leads to years and years of delay, of course, this creates a problem on the market. So these are a few reflections that we are having now. We are thinking about novel approaches to think in terms of how to determine what is recycled content, and we are acutely aware this is a point of tension where we have imports that sometimes are not verifiable and that also benefit from support and more favorable conditions in other countries of the world and come here at dumping prices. So we need to think also in a context in which it has become more accepted idea to speak about, in the context of public procurement, maybe also besides this, to speak about made in Europe products and materials. So we are thinking about how to leverage this opportunity when we think about recycled content. So I will stop here, and I look forward to your feedback and to participating in the panel. Unfortunately, I will have to leave at 2:50, 2:55, but I will look forward with a lot of interest to the interaction.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So still a lot of plans, a lot of ideas. I take note of the notion that one needs to intervene somehow to readjust this balance of prices between secondary raw materials and virgin. So there is a need for some level of intervention. The question is, I suppose, do we actually have the tools necessary to intervene, given our, let's say, market philosophy or something like that in the European Union? But maybe we can go into this. I would then like to introduce our other panelists who are joining us. Claudia Menzi is the president of FEAD. Paul de Bruyke is the president of CEWEP, and Olivier François is the president of EuRIC. A warm round of applause for the panel. So we heard already from the head of cabinet this morning that the circular economy discussion is also a conversation about strategic autonomy for the European Union, and Aurel mentioned it, I think Matthias mentioned it as well. There's a sort of a change in the way we are talking about the circular economy. It's not just an environmental policy. There's something else going on. And what we used to consider to be the planetary boundaries that would limit, our use of resources, and we need to find resource efficiency. Now we're talking about other kinds of boundaries as well, i.e. borders. And I would like to start with you first, Olivier, as an introductory comment on how you see the competitiveness aspect of the recycling industry, linked then also to this notion of sovereignty of Europe over its resources and over its secondary raw materials and over the integration of secondary raw materials back into the European economy, European industry. And especially then the link between exports and imports of materials, of secondary raw materials, but also of finished products into the European markets. And at the same time, you as a recycling industry gaining competitiveness, gaining access to more than just the European market. How do you see that moving forwards?
Thank you very much. And certainly this question of sovereignty and this question of export and import, as you quoted, can be also connected to what you say, Aurel, a few minutes ago with regard to the price. Or is it possible that the price of the, let's say, the normal new raw material is so cheap and the price of recyclates is so expensive. So this is also a very important question. And just for you to know, I will give you an example. In my company, we are working both in Belgium and the north of France. We produce more than 1 million tons of metal recyclates per year, and only, if I can say, 40,000 tons of plastic recycled. So 1 million tons, 40,000 tons of plastic recycled. When we made the balance of what we use as electricity to achieve those both production, the plastic recyclates is the highest, is bigger than all the 1 million and so metal recycled. And the metal, we have to shred them, we have to separate them, you know the process, okay. So it's incredible. When you need to reach high quality recycled material, you need a huge quantity of energy to achieve that, and naturally electricity. So this is really the first point we have to face, this question of price of electricity in Europe. If only the electricity, let's say, was 30 or 40% cheaper than it is today, then the plastic recycled we are able to produce in Europe will be below the level of the price of the polymer, the new polymer coming from abroad. You know, so it's not a big difference. We can change completely. So sorry, it's not exactly the answer you are expecting with regard to import, export, and sovereignty, but somewhere, because Aurel is there, and I want really to give him an answer about this question, because really this was a very important part of your speech, Aurel. The fact that we have a problem of cost, naturally. It's not only a problem of regulation. Okay, we have a lot of regulation, and I will say a word regarding the waste shipment regulation, regarding those questions of sovereignty. But first of all, the question is the energy price. And really, the recycling is a very energy-intensive activity, not so much that we can beneficiate of the low adjustment, you know, or subsidies, etc., regarding high energy intensive industry. So unfortunately for us, we are not so high energy intensive that we can beneficiate of subsidies or etc., but it is a very energy intensive activity. So, okay, this is very important. And to come back, Jean-Paul, to your question, naturally, with the waste shipment regulation, I must say that, you know, okay, this waste shipment regulation was certainly not appreciated in the recycling activity. You probably know that when 4 years or 5 years ago the Commission issued this project of waste shipment regulation. But what we should now think about is to have a kind of smart thinking about it. We have a problem with critical raw material. In Europe, we cannot afford the production of all kinds of critical raw material we need. So, if I can say, we have this possibility to continue to sell to foreign countries some of our commodities we are producing, which is under this waste shipment regulation, like the metals, for example. Today, the metals we recycle are considered, most of them, as a waste, so there will be a kind of export ban. Is it really smart to maintain this? If we have some countries in the world which are producing some critical materials we need, why not to continue to make a bargain with them, to continue to send to them the waste, which is naturally the recycled materials we produce to them, in order to set the critical material to go with them, you know? So I think this is an important point, not to apply a regulation like the waste shipment regulation bluntly, to say we just close the borders for everything. Why? We need friends, we need allies, we need that, because there is no country in the world, even Russia, even United States, who produce all the elements which are in the Mendeleev table. That is not, there is no country with all the Mendeleev table elements available. So we need bargain. We need to set intelligent, smart position with other countries in order to set. And this is a tool. This waste shipment regulation may be a tool. And to say, you need this steel, you need this aluminium, I need this cobalt, or I need this nickel. And we can achieve a deal. That's my position about that.
Okay, so maybe more than just a completely protective market, we need a slightly more smart version of competition or something like that. Yeah. If I turn then to Claudia on this question, would you think you benefit from more protection, more closed borders, supporting the European market, or would you still need access to these global markets for the materials you're treating?
Oh, well, I was listening carefully to what he was saying, and I have to say that, yeah, as FEAD, we published a manifesto, so we are in complete support of industrial deal and to the industrial deal to be circular. But the main objective of this industrial deal we have to consider is to double the circular material use rate. And we need a strong market for that, because we know already that we are now very far away from the target that we should achieve by 2030. And maybe closing the markets is not a good idea. Maybe we have to prioritize what is the market of our recyclates, but to keep the opportunity to have a market also outside Europe and to work with the rest of the world, but with a priority list, I would say, like prioritize our recyclates in our market, and first of all find the market for those materials, the materials that we are producing and that are so expensive also to be produced, as I was already saying before, especially compared with the virgin materials. So not closing completely the market, but prioritize the market for our recyclates. That would be my suggestion regarding this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. And Paul, in your sector, in the waste to energy sector, what does sovereignty for Europe look like, and how important is this notion of restricting imports and exports of materials from Europe?
Sorry, the waste-to-energy sector is, let's say, a local market. If you look at it from a perspective of the European market, it's not that we are so linked to what happens in the rest of the world. But it's clear, and I want to make that. I want to first of all to come on the circular economy, and then our role in that circular economy, and how we see that as waste-to-energy sector, because it's clear for us that the circular economy is essential to keep and to protect our competitiveness in the world of tomorrow. For me, it's also important to protect our welfare, our level of welfare that we have today. Why? Because we have no other choice. We do not have the raw materials in Europe. We have to import them, and once we have imported them, we have to use them as much as possible and not to consume them. So circular economy, and you said earlier on, in the past it was about environment. Now circular economy is two words. Circular is energy, it's resource efficiency, but economy is value creation. And that is really the challenge of the circular economy. It's economy 0.2. It's our economy for the future. And the challenge is that we need to make products from raw materials, from secondary raw materials that are as good as the ones that are made from virgin materials, but with a lower footprint, environmental footprint, and if possible, also cheaper. And that will be the challenge. And therefore, we will need innovation, technology in the technological field, the business model, and the systems. A second point I want to make is that also in the circular economy, it was already mentioned that the circular economy of tomorrow will also need huge amounts of clean, green energy. But second, also the notion of waste will also remain very important also in the circular economy, because waste has no value for the holder. And we have to oblige them, or better, incentivize them, in order to deliver the waste that they produce back into the chain, that it can be recycled, reused, or recovered. And so waste legislation is something what we will need also in order to make the circular economy happen. And that is also why we feel at home in that circular economy. And we, that's, as you have mentioned, the waste-to-energy sector. Besides the recycling sector and the collection sector, we also play an important role in that circular economy by turning non-recyclable waste into energy, local energy, but also into materials, minerals and metals that can go back into the circular economy. And we do that under the most stringent environmental standards. So waste to energy is not only essential to deal with the residual waste that is produced by society, but also it will be essential to help the recycling, to develop a high-quality recycling economy industry in Europe, as we have to deal with their rejects and their residues.
Thank you. So we have various ways of talking about sovereignty, access to a local energy source, protect smartly, but also don't fear the market. Actually, use the market and sell some of the great resources we create here in Europe. I know, Aurel, you had possibly a question, maybe a comment also on how to balance this sovereignty angle, protecting somehow. We heard from Matthias, we need a flourishing recycling industry. So how do we protect that industry in Europe when we are working on global markets that are more and more restrictive or restricted, or that we are voluntarily restricting? How do we keep a flourishing industry when it potentially cannot export?
Yeah, this is one of the current questions. There is no recipe. I would like to say, however, that we are aware that the high energy prices play an important role, and one of the important building blocks of the Clean Industrial Deal will be to come up with an action plan of several measures designed to lower the energy prices and to accelerate the move to renewables, or the completion of the road to full or to a higher use of renewables. But as we know very well, I think we need to look at things with open eyes and clarity of mind. This will not happen overnight. So this means the lowering of the prices. It will be a process, so we need to put at work also other solutions for improving the economic situation in the recycling sector and to lower the prices of recyclates by scale, and here implementation is an important ingredient. I did not mention it in my initial intervention, but I would like to say that we remain committed to convey strong messages and to try to mobilize more the member states, in particular those lagging behind, to improve the implementation. I mean, we can come with 10 circular economy acts. If the landfilling rate does not effectively goes down more severely, and not in just 2-3 member states, in many member states, if the separate collection of municipal organic waste does not happen everywhere in all the municipalities in the European Union, if the separate collection of textiles does not happen everywhere in all the municipalities, and how to say, this year, I'm not saying tomorrow, it should have happened on the 1st of January this year for textiles, and a year ago, on the 1st of January 2024, for organic waste. We all know that this is not the situation. And here, I think the implementation dialogues, I hope, the implementation dialogues, and if my commissioner is willing to travel to the different member states, it should visit the capitals also and meet your national members there, not only the national government, and also she should meet the municipalities there. She should, and we are encouraging her, to convey strong messages to the member states about implementation and achieving results. No mandatory recycled content in packaging or in automotives will be possible if the selective collection of plastics does not happen across the European Union and if recyclates do not become more widely available. This should contribute also to lower the prices of this. But I had also a question, and I will be synthetic. So you spoke about the difference of energy costs for plastics, but let me ask you for steel specifically, or for aluminium, why is the steel scrap or the aluminium scrap more attractive for steel or aluminium manufacturers in Europe than the use, for instance, the move to hydrogen and to fueling the steel mills through hydrogen by moving to electric arc furnaces and so on? Because we had the impression that there is a polemic between the steel manufacturers and the recyclers. The steel manufacturers are not so much interested in using the scrap because they feel that this is not cheap. So why it's more attractive to export certain things into Turkey, for instance, steel scrap to Turkey, to Bangladesh or to India?
Thank you. Of course, it's a very good question, very important, particularly with the steel, because it's naturally the most important material we use industrially, speaking, I mean, the steel. So what happens in the last 25 years or 30 years is that there was a lot of closing of steel mills in Europe. If you go back 30 years ago, all the production of the recycled steel in Europe was used in Europe. We produce 100 million tons of steel, recycled steel in Europe, which is very close to the total of the production of steel in Europe. Today, the steel mills, all the steel mills together in Europe, they are producing 126 million tons of the melted steel, good to be used, etc. So we are very close to that, but the fact is that they didn't choose the electric route. Contrarily to, you mentioned Turkey, but even the United States. Today, in Europe, the use of recycled steel by the steel mills is 56%. If you go to in the US, it's 70%. So it's a big difference. Why? Because recycled steel use in the steel's production. Yeah, 70% to be compared to 56% in Europe. Why? Because in Europe, the steel mills, they stick to their old blast furnace, which is very nice. Naturally, it's a very nice process. It works well, but it's not circular at all. They use essentially iron ore in it and coke. Okay, so in the US, for economic reason, it's not for environmental reason, because you know the US, they are not so used, to say the least, regarding environmental questions, but just for economic questions. They say it's cheaper to produce. Naturally, if the electricity is cheap, it's cheaper to produce the steel with electric arc furnace, starting from recycled steel, than to use the blast furnace. But okay, it's really a question of choice. At the highest level, in ArcelorMittal, in ThyssenKrupp, they say, no, we have the blast furnace, and we continue on this route, So that's the real difference. Today, we export finally outside from Europe only 20% of the recycled steel. It's not so much. But okay, it's 20 million tons. It's easy because 20% of 100 million tons met 20 million tons. It's easy. But it's not because the price is better in Egypt, in Morocco, or in Turkey. If we export, it's just because there is no need in Europe at this time of what we are producing in Europe. We are a net exporter of nearly all the recycled material, not only steel. It's the same for the plastic. It's the same for the aluminium, the copper. We are in Europe net producer, exporter, because we are net producer. We produce more recycled material in Europe than we use, because the industry is not there anymore.
So this also demonstrates that the circular economy policy cannot exist outside of an industrial policy. It's one of the factors why the circular material use rate remains extremely low, because there are not necessarily many outlets in terms of industrial production. So these are factors that we need to consider. The other thing, I don't know about you, but I always get very, very confused when it comes to waste management and all this circular economy stuff, is the amount of legislation that exists in this field. I mean, it really is a little bit mind-blowing. And when we have a conversation on achieving energy and material autonomy through circular economy policies, you wonder exactly, what exactly will you be talking about? Which angle shall you take? So to try and remove this headache from our table, I would like to ask each of you, and I will start with Claudia first, to just give me a sense of one single piece of legislation that you would really welcome some kind of a change to, or some kind of an improved implementation or a speedier implementation that would really make a difference for you in terms of achieving the circular economy. If you had to pick one and explain a little bit what you have in mind behind that.
Just the fact that I have to choose just one, it's a problem, really, because it's not just one that I will change. But because I take the freedom to say two, if you allow me, okay? So why I will do that? Because one is already existing and the other one is not yet a piece of legislation, but is going on. So first of all is the new European Competitiveness Fund. I would like to see the Circular Economy Fund related to this Competitiveness Fund. And the reason why, because there is a huge problem with the price gap between virgin materials and recyclates, and this was already stated also in the Draghi report, because the circular single market requires also a level playing field, and this was stated in the latter report, and both private and public sector and investment are needed in doing this in allowing this to happen, and the industry is ready to be committed in this path and to push forward for the circularity, but we need a strong push too from the government side, from the authorities, to revert the current situation, and this is really very important. And on the other side, I want to also add one piece of legislation that I would like to see change, or not change completely, but applied in a broader way, and this is taxonomy, because taxonomy is not considering all the value chain of waste. We are not just talking about resources that we can have from waste, we are talking about energy also. And we should consider also energy. And as someone was saying before, we have the problem also with the energy prices. Why are we still not considering the energy recovery as one of the main topics that should be considered into taxonomy, in order to give the possibility to the plants to innovate technologies and to be able really to produce energy at a low level price? That's my answer.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It was too short and clear, so I give you the two, no problem. Paul.
Yeah, certainly I support Claudia. I fully support that position. But for me, what is also very important in order to make the circular economy happen and to push it is that we should avoid that waste that can be recycled or recovered, that is lost in landfills. Still in Europe, we landfill more than 150 million tons of valuable materials. Push that to the treatment, recycling sector, waste sector. They are going to deal with it and they will make value out of it.
Okay, but surely implementing that, because the goal is there. So you don't have a problem with the goal as such in terms of the legislation and the target and all that. It's
implementation.
It's implementation.
It is implementation, because if you look, it's already for 30 years that we have that legislation in place, but still, in some of our member states, it's still an issue that it is not implemented.
Would you dare to go as far as to say what could be done to implement it?
Yeah, for me, it's first of all, the best is always to incentivize the holders of the waste in order to make another choice than just put it in a landfill. A landfill, be aware, a landfill, if you, in the short term, is the cheapest solution. Not in the long term, because we always have to take care of that for eternity. Yeah? So try to, you can do that by, for example, by levies, bring in economical incentives in order to push that to the recycling sector. But be aware, we always will need some landfills in order to deal with the waste that can't be recycled or can't be recovered.
Brilliant, thank you. Olivier, one piece of legislation.
Just before this, maybe just to support what you say, Claudia and Paul, it's absolutely important. I mentioned that in my company we produce 40,000 tons of recycled plastic per year. You have to know that due to the fact that many of those plastic sorting, there is a lot of plastic which are glued together, because you probably know that most of what is the process to manufacture appliance, object is manufactured by gluing the pieces. It's not anymore like it was 60 years ago with a screw or rivets or things like that. No, everything is now, the assembly of everything is due to glue. So it means that when we produce 40,000 tons of recycled, finished recycled products, the products which is close to be used, we produce 10,000 tons of plastics, which is we cannot sell it anymore. So there is a solution for this moment in France is going in a landfill. So it's quite incredible. It's 10,000 tons just for this small plant to do what? To do nothing. There is no valorization, and this is really very sorry because it's just carbon and hydrogen. It's very valuable. Why do we go in the United States to look for gas which is coming from fracking, and we consider this natural gas as good for us in US, in the EU, but we consider the burning of plastic, which is a waste, not good for EU. This is crazy for me. It makes no sense. There should be a clear position about that. It's better to burn in Europe what is the material we cannot recycle anymore, and to take the opportunity of energy with that, than to go to look for natural gas coming from fracking in the US. It seems, it seems so incredible. So, but okay, so it doesn't give you an answer to that. So no, I will take a joker for that question. Okay.
that I could interpret that as don't change anything at all, you know. Okay, in the context of Denmark, let's say, that would be interesting on a national level, you know. Would it be an implementation style thing, something you just need to change to get something implemented, or would you need to make a change still to a piece of legislation to take a step forward towards the circular economy?
I think from my perspective, I would look more horizontal at it and say harmonization across legislation, particularly what has been adopted in the last 5 years. I already see our experts trying to implement it, pulling out their hair because each and every one is sort of the same, but then at the same time also a bit different. So there's a need to make sure that the laws are really talking together, that they are aligned. And I think that would be my wish if that could be done in just one moment in time. And then, of course, implementation is incredibly important, I think, both horizontally and vertically, so across legislation, and then that it's done in the same way in every member state.
Okay, brilliant. And Aurel, would you mind if I ask you this question in a very personal manner? Like, if I was somewhere around the office, you know, I would probably know, yeah, Aurel is always banging on that specific piece of legislation that he would really like to change. You know, I'm sure your colleagues know which one it is. Would you care to share with us which one that would be for you, like personally, in a way, the most decisive one?
I don't bang on the table about a piece of legislation. No, I will. This requires a fresh look. So I would say the following: that maybe certain things in the Waste Framework Directive could be improved, and this is what we aim at with the, for instance, reform of the end of waste criteria, and maybe some reform of the extended producer responsibility schemes. We have heard the call of some member states, Denmark, but not only, about a complete overhaul of the Waste Framework Directive. Such reforms, to turn it into a resource law of the European Union, do not happen in 6 months. Clearly, the process was how to say, the lawmaking and the preparation of the proposals is geared in such a way in order to buy a lot of time for public consultations, impact assessment. So you don't, this is why the ambition to come with something at the beginning of the mandate is clearly not allowing a complete overhaul of the Waste Framework Directive. But I would submit that maybe we don't need a complete overhaul. And for instance, to pick up also a polemic issue that maybe can others will want to comment on it. I've heard suggestions about, and I think one of your questions for today is about, oh, what about reforming the hierarchy of waste? Yes. Why not? I mean, it would be, yeah, there is something here. Yeah, on the other hand, is there enough focus on moving up the waste hierarchy? And it's a different question, yeah, but I saw waste hierarchy and it, I felt the need to bang on the table. Because I have heard suggestions about, oh, and you should amend the waste hierarchy about this and that. It's like the holy grail, the waste hierarchy. Do we need absolutely to have a culture war about, I mean, every try to reform the waste hierarchy will trigger a culture war, and we need to have the clear understanding why we would do this. And I haven't heard a concrete argument about why we would, what we cannot do, and we could do only, it's so important that we need to reform the waste hierarchy.
Okay, so some rocks are best left unturned. You know, it's there, and it's a good thing to hang on to. Okay, brilliant. I think we have ample time. I would also like to hear some comments and views from the floor. You all have access to microphones, so it's an ideal opportunity. We'll start over here at the back. Please briefly introduce yourselves as well.
Yeah, the founder of the waste hierarchy, Dr. Lansink. I have several years now have a deep dialogue with him, and the big problem with the waste hierarchy is that it misses the detoxification perspective. So the higher we raise in the hierarchy, if you don't decontaminate, you will spread toxin. But we can talk about that later. The topic, Per Larsson from Ragn-Sells, Sweden. I'm also a member of the board of EuRIC, Water Europe, and also chairman globally for International Chamber of Commerce, work on circular economy. The topic here has been that everything we do when it comes to recycling or circularity will cost more money. No, that's not true. We're now building 2 phosphorus factories in Europe, in Germany and in Sweden. The problem we face is that we can't sell the product that we will produce in Europe based on anti-circular legislation, meaning that we can sell it as a feed quality. So therefore, we're now applying to sell the phosphorus to Canada. The 2 first factories will be in total 200 million euros in investment, and the potential only for Europe is 50 of those factories just to produce enough with feed phosphates for Europe. The interesting part here, and here we come to the financing dimension, we will not need gate fees. We will have a return on investment for the cities that invest in this, if we can just be able to sell it based on the quality and not the origin. And this is the problem with waste. So I really would like to say that there are potential if we do large scale and understand that large scale innovation together will reduce the cost. So I really would like to hear your view about that, and if we hear any other examples of those potential we see. We have 6 of those more innovations, especially for the construction sector, where we really can reduce the cost and be competitive towards the virgin production. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Neva Nachtigal. I'm the director of Reuse. We're Europe's largest network of social enterprises active in the circular economy. Thank you very much for organizing this to all of you. And excuse me, I don't want to be a bad guest. I know the forum I'm in, but I also don't want to be a bad director of the organization that I represent. So in that view, I do want to make a case for the waste hierarchy and predominantly point out that whereas understandably today, given who's organizing this, we're focusing on recycling, but I do really hope that in the future, as the future of circular economy policies is shaped, we do acknowledge and see that there's a lot before that. And I really appreciated the comment from Mr. Kierkegaard that we do need to also look at the higher, excuse me, the higher levels. So as we are looking toward the Circular Economy Act, I really appeal to everybody to consider the need to firstly prevent waste, and then secondly, for what is already in waste and is sorted, that we then also prioritize preparation for reuse. Thank you very much.
You can even clap louder.
Yes, my name is Jacob Simonsen from Denmark, the Copenhagen Ski Hill plant. I think one of the problems is that we have some markets that are not functioning correctly. We have some pretty good markets for reusable, recyclable steel, cardboard, paper, but we also have some markets that are definitely not functioning. Markets for textiles, market for plastics. It doesn't really work. And so what we can do is that we can collect and we can try to get this recycled, but nobody wants our product. And that's the big problem. We have piles and piles of products and nobody wants them. They're too poor in the quality and they're too costly to recycle. And I think if we are to have the circular economy working in these kind of markets, we need to turn it around. We need to have demands on, if you are to produce textiles in Europe, we need to have some recyclable fiber in the new textiles. If you are to produce plastics, then we need some recyclable input to that plastic. Why not regulate that packaging should only be done by 2 different kinds of plastics? Today we have hundreds of different kinds of plastics, and it is so difficult to recycle. Right? I think we need to apply politics in the way that we need to move forward here. I strongly support the suggestion from Paul de Bruycker. The biggest waste that we have is what we landfill. Stop landfilling of recyclable and waste that we can reuse for other purposes. Thank you.
A comment from Morel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the insightful comments and also for suggestions, but I'm also feeling that maybe some of your suggestions about packaging may be some, false friends, if I may say so, and I'm not critical, but for instance, if we come, I tell you, in the context of the simplification drive, if the Commission will come tomorrow and say all the packaging in the European Union must be made only of 2 polymers, we will be shot down instantly by the chemical industry, I tell you. And they will say, this is a major burden, you are killing us. So this is why, maybe the idea in essence is a good one, but it should have been taken 30 years ago when the plastics were scaled up. So we also need to bring changes and reforms which are contemporary to the current economic, technological, and political climate, I'm afraid.
I would also like to maybe bring in, I don't want to point fingers, but try and tell me if you would like to intervene, because I think this question of essentially a market failure in the sense of there is no market uptake of these materials, and it sounds like the answer would be some form of a regulatory approach to enforce that market uptake through whatever incentive or target but some intervention. And then the question is that the right approach? Cannot we imagine a much more market-based approach where simply, that the quality of the materials either improves, if that is a problem, or the functionality of the final products is somehow also assessed and integrated into that conversation, because we still need to have functional products in the end. So if the manufacturers are saying, well, sorry, but the quality of the secondary raw materials is insufficient in whatever shape or form, I'm not sure it's just regulation that can work on that. Maybe a quick reaction, and then we'll have Paul and Claudia. Okay.
Yes, we're talking about competitiveness in Europe, and what you're actually suggesting is that we should compete with products that are lesser quality and higher cost. Doesn't make sense, right? It is too complicated if we are to compete with recyclates that are, nobody wants them, and it's too costly, right? Virgin materials are cheaper. We hear it again and again, there's a price gap. There's a price gap. How can we compete with that? Question mark.
Okay, so I just wanted to add something, to add a point regarding especially the packaging. The fact that the chemical industry is always saying, okay, we have so many different kind of plastic because we need to have also, like, for instance, multi-layer plastic. Because we are used as citizens to go and to buy at the supermarket the single-use portion because we are living alone, I don't know, the student and so on. So different level of things are needed in my idea. First of all, a complete change of mind for the people. People, especially the young people, should be more interested in buying things without packaging. Like if you go to the supermarket and you bring your own box or bag or whatever, and you can fill it with what you need, like cereals, like, I don't know, like things that you use to clean the house and so on, that's already a step forward to reduce packaging. On the other side, from the chemical industry point of view, they should do an effort, make an effort. And the effort is to try to evaluate better the kind of substances that they are using in their products before they are putting the products in the market. Because we are used, as waste management sector, we are used to be at the end of the chain, trying to figure it out, what is contained in that material, in that article, and we need to remove it, and we need to clean it, and we need to invent a new waste treatment for that particular material, and so on. Wouldn't it be better if they just consider from the beginning, what will be the impact of using this new substance in this article? Should I maybe do an evaluation also from an environmental point of view, not only from a healthy point of view to maintain the product in a safe way, but also from an environmental point of view, and not as a self-evaluation, but as an evaluation that is really meaningful, that someone can check and control and really apply a surveillance on that, because at the end of the chain, it's already too late. And we can be creative as we want, but it's still very difficult. Sometimes can be very difficult. And we developed, in the last 30 years, our sector changed completely from a service sector towards an industry sector. And at some point, going around Europe to our members and seeing different kind of waste treatment plants, really, I saw so many different technologies applied. How people can be really creative in a good way, in a good, positive way, to find solutions. And on top of that, I want also to say that for some substances, we are also lacking of analytical technologies. So that is also a problem. And I can assure you that the chemical industry, they know very well how to analyze the substances. They know from the beginning. They have the standards, they have the analytical methods and everything, but they're not willing to share it. So we have to develop ourselves the methodologies. And this will take years and money, investment. So this is a problem. I think we should work on that from the beginning, at the producer level. Thank you.
So as Aurel needs to leave just now, so a final comment from Morel, and then I'll get back to Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted, listening to what Claudia has said, and she's bringing the problem of hazardous substances. We have reflections about, how to, in particular in the PFAS context, what to do this in order to make sure that the manufacturers of such chemical substances internalize and do not externalize the costs as much as possible. But so the reflection is ongoing. It's a really complex issue, also because of the ubiquity of this, that we are discovering now, all with large eyes, that there are so many uses. But I would like to reassure you that your concerns, and in particular the call for more transparency from the manufacturers of chemical substances, also towards their downstream users, manufacturers of goods incorporating such chemical substances, is on the agenda of the REACH revision, another important front on which we will have to bring forward a legislative proposal by the end of this year. So thank you very much, and I wish you a very good continuation of the debates, and I look forward to stay engaged and together with my colleagues to stay engaged with your associations also in the next weeks to reflect together about certain things. We may invite you at short notice to exchange about some hot topics about what would be the best scenario for this or that. So I hope we can rely on your wisdom. Thank you very much and have a great continuation.
Thank you, Aurel. Thank you. Maybe more extended producer responsibility on chemicals. You wanted more extended producer responsibility, so maybe on chemical substances. Okay, Paul, let's get back to this market failure issue and how it could be addressed without necessarily regulation.
Yes, first of all, I'm not so optimistic about change in mind. If I see the amount of waste that is produced after a late evening in the city, and the amount of waste that is produced in consumption on the go. But what I strongly believe in is what you have said is about scale and innovation. Scale and innovation will solve the problem. And one of the things that is important, what you also mentioned, is to remove barriers to put your products, recycled products, onto the market. But, I'm sorry, we have also to look to ourselves sometimes and to the recycling sector. It will not work, and it will never work when you go to the market with a product that you say, okay, yeah, it's a recycled product, but it's not as good as the virgin one, and by the way, it's a little bit more expensive. That will not work. At the end, we have to come with a product that is similar as the one that is produced from virgin materials. And by innovation, it works. Innovation and scale. And then you have to claim that the barriers, and that is most of the time it's because some people are protecting their market positions or their branding, or call it what you want. But that is what we should avoid. And there we should have a much more open mind in order to bring those products as products and under REACH and under the application of all what is the product regulation back on the market.
Okay, thank you. And Olivier, maybe also a comment. I mean, is it regulation that is the answer to address this market failure? Sometimes it feels that this recycling market needs so much regulation on either side of it, that, it's difficult to survive.
No, it's certainly an important point. And I think we have just to come back a second on what Aurel said before his departure regarding the fact that he was very concerned. Finally, when you ask Jean-Paul to Aurel, what is the main topic for him, which is banging, as you say, on the table, it was this waste framework directive. And not to change everything in it, but I think that he mentioned the end of waste, naturally, and I think that if we come back a few years ago, there was a very interesting work which was done, and I think Denmark was probably the leader in Europe regarding this, which is called industrial ecology, which means that when you have companies which are relatively close together in a big place where big industrial plants are together, then it is interesting to connect the dots and to connect the possibility from some plants which are very close one to the other. Someone is producing a byproduct, co-product, waste, etc. We can discuss this. To this product or this material to be used by its neighbor, which is just, let's say, 100 meters away. And so this is really the key in industrial ecology. Well, it has been theorized 30 years ago, and there is not much application in Europe. But it's a pity, because industrial ecology was really, and is today, I think, really something interesting. And this can be typically implemented in the Waste Framework Directive with not so much change. It has been done in France in 23. There was a law, and there is a law now, from 23, which is called Green Industry. Okay, that's the name of the law. France, in French, it makes Industrie Verte. And this Green Industry law exactly states this point of industrial ecology, like you practice this in Denmark, for example. So, and what does it mean? It means that it's relatively easier and simpler to organize the market of those secondary material or co-product, byproducts, because just, yes, it makes sense in a simple way. So it's not a big change. We don't need a big bang in the regulation, or like Aurel said, start from zero, from scratch, to completely delete the Waste Framework Directive. This is, like he said, and I agree with him, it's a terrible work, and it will entail probably years of work, and I don't think it's a good way to do. Some small modification can really make sense and ease the process to valorize the material. Okay, just a point.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? We have one at the back, please.
No, just I would like to say that this industrial symbiosis is something that is already existing since years. And I mean, in ACR Plus, with some of our members, we have been involved since years and pushing our members, so public authorities, to be the enabler to put together those industries and to ease permits, etc. So I think that this is already something that can be much more developed. So it's a very good example, but it exists, and I think that rules are there to do it quite easily.
I wouldn't say that it's quite easily, but that it exists, and it is also changing the nature of our activities. Because in the past, if you look to the waste-to-energy sector, but also to a lot of our industries in the recycling sector also, we were looking only for one goal. For example, we had a double goal at the waste-to-energy sector, a hygienic one, and producing in energy as much as possible. But now, when you become part of such an industrial ecosystem like my company has in the port of Antwerp, then you have to deliver at each moment steam or hydrochloric acid or other materials at the quality and the quantity that they need. And that makes that your whole operations, the operations of your plant become much more complex. But that's the way to go, because then you use each kilogram of material and each unit that is present in the waste that is delivered to your plant, you give it a useful application.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments to add to our conversation here on essentially addressing market failure? It seems to be where we are at. Please, at the back.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm looking forward to coffee, actually. But this is such an interesting discussion, so I want to maybe add something to it. Are we aware, actually, also, if you look at the figures from the International Energy Agency, what we have as global resources on reserves on oil, and what the consumption level is. Take a year 2021 or 2022, and you divide the two. Have we actually an idea of how close we are, maybe in 50 years already, that the reserves of oil are gone, actually? And that it is, of course, essential for Europe in particular to move. It's a no-brainer to move towards the circular economy, right? And it comes with new challenges and new risks. But we are facing also finity of certain very essential building blocks which have made our industry great, not only in Europe but also in the rest of the world. Have you thought about that, actually, the finity of resources, and that it is indeed, from that perspective, a no-brainer to work as fast as possible and to push the barriers concerning circular economy.
So how close are we to have fully depleted our resources in a way also for industrial production?
I think we are pretty close because if I remember well, I don't know if it was in Emirates or something like that area, they are already filling up the desert with, how do you say, the photovoltaic panels in order to produce energy instead of using the oil. So that's already, I think, that gives us an idea of how we are close in finishing the reserves, probably. So maybe less than 50 years, we don't know. And that's why we should use every kind of instrument that we have to produce, in order to produce energy at a European level, in order to become more self-sufficient, if it's possible, and but be aware that we don't have then to be to have to rely on other critical raw materials that we don't have. Like if we think of batteries and something like that, we still have to rely on metals that are not produced in or present in Europe, and we have to rely on China or Vietnam or Northern Africa and so on. So we have to really find the balance. And we need every kind of idea and instrument in order to achieve that balance, in my opinion.
So I'm an engineer and an optimist. And humanity always have found solutions. So I strongly believe that we will do that also at this moment. So we should have a look. Sometimes I have heard that we need the circular economy in order to decrease the CO2 emissions. It was already mentioned today that the circular economy also needs a lot of clean energy. Without that, but the circular economy will be needed in order to have enough raw materials, in order to make all the assets we need, in order to make the energy transition real. And that is how it's that what we will need to do. Don't consume those materials anymore. Use them, reuse them, and keep them in the circles.
I would like to bounce back also on a point that was made by Claudia on this notion of responsibility for the types of products or chemicals in this case that are placed on the market within products and the effects these can have on the longer term. And I think everyone has made the case for the circular economy. We might not have the precise figures of how close we are to full depletion, but we know that there's a sense of urgency there. And I think the question is that we can't just rely on regulation. There needs to be some market forces that are somehow working towards a common goal, but they somehow also need to work in pretty complex value chains. And there needs to be information in those value chains so that we understand what is in products and how does it become waste and how does it transform when it is a waste and how much is it of a good quality in order to become a secondary raw material into the economy and all the rest of it. And so I think we're past the time of pointing fingers in the value chain to say it's your fault or it's your fault. I mean, there is something else going on in the conversation today, and that's probably a good thing. But I feel that somehow extended producer responsibility as a concept has largely carried this notion of let's create a framework in a market to empower actions towards the circular economy. And as the circular economy becomes more and more critical, not just in terms of resource efficiency, but also for the economy, for autonomy and sovereignty and all the things we've discussed, I would like to hear from you what kind of model of value chain cooperation would you imagine is necessary to create that joint level of action within product categories. So is it just extended producer responsibility multiplied across multiple different product categories, or should we be thinking about this in a different manner? Should it be maybe more material based across multiple product categories? What kind of approach would you imagine would be necessary to support these circular economy ambitions that have been outlined so far? Maybe Matthias, would you like to have a first go at that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start out. I think I can also touch a bit on the market failures then. One directive that has been very important in the past is the Eco-Design Directive, which set some requirements to products, and it turned out that actually at some point companies started to call for more rapid action to increase the ambition. So this is one way you can pull the market in the right direction. And now when you have the eco-design regulation and you will have the digital product passport, I think that this would be a very important tool in making sure that information is transferred throughout the supply chain, and more importantly maybe also survive the use stage. So once I've worn my t-shirt for way too long, recyclers can still find out how to handle it in the best possible way. And in this regard, I would also like to mention, I'm sure there's nobody in here, but some have expressed that they were quite unsatisfied with the fact that they were actually supposed to know what is in their products. And I think that's very concerning, not just from a safety perspective, but also from a perspective of how do we handle this material in the best possible manner once it becomes waste. And then EPR, I think I'll let somebody else answer, but this is obviously also an ingredient that can play an important role.
Yes, thank you for this question. Naturally, we have a long experience now of EPR scheme in Europe particularly, but well, in the world in general, because you probably remember the EPR was designed by OECD in the end of the 80s, and the first one in Europe were applied to packaging in 92, about along in Germany, in France, the packaging directive at this moment was applied with this concept of EPR. Okay, normally the EPR is there to apply the polluter pay principle, which is a nice principle, polluter pay, but naturally doesn't say, oh, it works. So the OECD introduced the way it was to be organized, and what we observed for those last, let's say, 30, 32, 33 years of application of this EPR scheme concept is that it's incredibly different in all the countries who apply this EPR scheme concept. Incredibly different. And naturally we can, and so we work during those last 30 years in our own federations at national level, or let's say at the European level, to benchmark, to make a comparison of all those EPR schemes. Which are the ones which are doing well, which are the ones which are not working well at all, and which sometimes some of them completely destroy the recycling industry of one country. So this happens. So it's not EPR as such. I mean, as a concept to say, it's a good idea to set the manufacturer of an appliance or a manufacturer of an object to take into account the cost of the recycling or the valorization or etc. Of this appliance or object when it is end of life. The subject is not there only. First of all, I will say the fact that in the EPR concept, there was never taken into account the fact that the economy of what is supposed to be valorized is positive or negative. Okay, in the case of the packaging, it was relatively clear in the beginning of the 90s, 91, 92, when there was this first EPR scheme which was applied to the packaging. It was relatively clear that the treatment of packaging was a cost, particularly for the municipalities, and we are here together with the municipalities to naturally we can speak about that. It's a cost. It's a high cost of collection, and always, we can say always, in nearly every kind of waste, end-of-life product, the question is the cost of collection. And for the packaging, the cost of collection is very high. So I fully agree in this case, the manufacturer, the producer, the people who sell the packaging on the market, they have to participate to this financing, and particularly to help the municipalities in the collection, in the separate collection of the packaging. That's absolutely clear. My concern, and this is really clear when we go on the electric and electronic appliance, for example, or if we go, again, better in the case of the car, the automobile recycling, my concern is that in some cases, the economy of the recycling is positive, which means that nobody waited for long to recycle the vehicle when the vehicle was introduced on the market. I mean, we go 1 century ago, as soon as the vehicle was produced, there was an accident, there was an end-of-life vehicle, and it has always been taken into account. So what is the smart idea to set an EPR scheme when everything is working well? I mean, the car manufacturer, they don't know at all what it means to recycle a vehicle. Their job is to produce vehicle, but if you go to them and to say, now you have to take into account the recycling of vehicle, which is more or less the situation we are facing now, they say, but we don't know. You have you, the dismantlers, the shredders, the recyclers of metals, etc., you have always done the job. So why should I pay for that? That's particularly clear. There is nothing to be paid. The recycling of vehicle or the recycling of washing machine is not a problem of payments. This is a positive economy. Different for fridges. If you go in some countries like Canada, those people were smart. They say, I don't set an e-waste EPR scheme for everything. I set an EPR scheme only for the fridges, because there is a cost. So there, I should naturally involve the fridges manufacturer to pay for something because there is a cost. But for the washing machine, there is no cost. It's a positive economy. So in the Canada, they say, okay, the washing machine, it is done by the people which are working on that, for recycling the metals, recycling the elements which are in there, and I don't want to care or to interfere with their business, you know? So I think this is really important, to take care of the existing recycling industry and to measure, to appreciate if it's a positive economy or a negative economy, and then make a decision regarding this. More or less, that's my position.
Okay, so it's an economic decision based on whether a waste materials market can function or functions naturally. Paul, in terms of these models of shared responsibility across the value chain, do you think it's about extended producer responsibility, or would we need to rethink this a little bit for the future?
I fully support the position that has been discussed there. But for us, for example, look to the waste-to-energy sector. We emit some CO2 from fossil origin, and most of that CO2 comes from plastics, plastic packaging. What can we do? We can take it out, we can sort it out, and we can send it for recycling, or we can install CCS, that's carbon capture. EPR on plastics could also be a possibility to help us to finance the the carbon capture installation on our plants, because then the ones that are responsible for the emissions of the fossil CO2 would pay, and not everybody. If such a system would be more targeted, otherwise we have to charge it to the customer, and then we have to charge it to everybody. So that can be an advantage of EPR in this field.
Brilliant, thank you. And maybe Claudia, as a final comment on this, I mean, you mentioned this importance of also getting access to information on the substances. Do you also feel that the value chains that are bringing products to the market have in general a sufficient understanding of their impact when it comes to waste management? And is extended producer responsibility enough in creating that shared responsibility?
Well, I think that a combination of the EPR and the eco-design, and the good eco-design, probably will lead towards the right direction. On the other side, the transparency from the chemical industry and the producer and the manufacturer, it's really mandatory, needs to be mandatory. If you look at any kind of safety data sheet, you will see the 14th point, if I remember well, the 14th one is the one regarding the environmental issues and the impact, and it's usually a couple of lines, like just discard of this in a good way. That's it, to make it simple. So it would be better, probably, to take a look at that point and try to open that point in a better way and try to look in that point and have a real environmental impact assessment before they put the product in the market. In that way, really the citizen, the downstream user can really evaluate what needs to be done with that product at the end of life. And another point is, as I was saying already before, the analytical methods, because the chemical industry knows very well what kind of analytical technologies needs to be used to detect a specific substance, and they have the standards and they have everything, and they need to be obliged to tell this information to the at the end of the chain to the person, the company that is going to deal with the waste.
And to some extent, it links up with the comment of the gentleman on the waste hierarchy that what is missing is the decontamination part, you know, and in a way that sort of links up to that. Thank you so much. I think our panelists deserve a warm round of applause. Thank you for having shared all your knowledge and insights. I think that's been really enlightening on some of the, you know, issues, let's say, in the market for the circular economy, but good intentions. Good policies underway, a lot of work probably for many of you in the room in the years to come. I would like then to invite our final speaker, who is also representing the place where we are hosted today at the European Economic and Social Committee. This is Mr. Solt Kukedi. He is the rapporteur of the EESC opinion on the revision of the EU Waste Framework Directive. Please welcome Zolt, and he will be giving some final closing remarks on our conference.
Thank you very much for the floor, and you can imagine how difficult to summarize such a valuable and very rich discussion what we have today, including that brainstorming what we have here. So it's so difficult. My name is Zsolt Kukedi. I am a member of the EESC, that house where we are hosted in. The voice of the organized civil society in Brussels, as we call it. So I would like to express my gratitude to all speakers, participants and organizers who have contributed to this refreshing discussion about policy and practices, which hopefully brought inspiration and motivation to put our ambition into action to combat our collective challenges to zero waste. The presentation of the policymakers, experts and stakeholders in the diverse panels reaffirms the vital role of collaborating across all sectors and levels of the society. Before I conclude with some key takeaways from the discussion had today, let me say a few words about the committee and our work that can help driving the circular economy forward. The European Economic and Social Committee, also known as House of Civil Society, is an EU advisory body that promotes a prominent role of organized civil society in the EU legislative processes. Our members represent 3 groups across the European Union, namely businesses, trade unions and other civil associations, which I am representing from Hungary. They work together in a balanced way to provide advice to EU institutions. Established in 2017, based on an opinion of our committee, the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, as we call EESC, is a stakeholder-driven initiative run in collaboration with the European Commission. It adopts a bottom-up approach, uniting a diverse range of stakeholders who are committed to improving Europe's resource efficiency by advancing the circular economy agenda. By working together, these stakeholders can identify challenges and opportunities in the circular economy implementation at EU, national and local levels. This is exactly what we propose to the Commission. In our opinion, on the revision of the EU Waste Framework Directive, adopted in 2023, for which I was a rapporteur of. We recommended consulting stakeholders through initiatives like the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform to align policies with the EU current agenda and goals. This platform offers a wealth of expertise and best practices that can be leveraged to ensure the full and effective implementation of waste management legislation. Tackling food and textile waste must be a strategic priority for the EU. Food that is not consumed and wasted, along with unused textiles, are not only waste, they are also pose a serious environmental problem. Our focus on prevention in food and textile waste to alleviate environmental pressure highlights a critical point. Managing waste is not enough. We must focus on reducing its creation. This is in line with the waste hierarchy, clarifying legislation on textile waste prevention alongside revising key concepts and terminology to ensure uniform interpretation across member states is vital for tackling waste prevention effectively. The introduction of mandatory extended producer responsibility system reinforcing the polluter pays principle is something that we strongly welcome. This approach should send a clear signal to the market and producers, ensuring accountability. We therefore suggest reconsidering the position whereby the protection of micro-enterprises takes precedence over the polluter pays principle, as we call to streamline the application of polluter pays principle. But let us also focus on the solutions that are easy to implement. Take composting, it should be considered as a natural cycle. Organic waste is generated in our homes, and the final product of composting is suitable for replenishing nutrients and fertilizers, which provides a climate-friendly and cost-saving solution. Today's discussion has demonstrated that EU waste legislation is not merely a regulation framework, it's about putting on our ambitions into actions. Here are some key takeaways which I noted throughout these panels. The transition to circularity is not only changing business models, but people's mindset in regard of raw materials, products we use, energy we consume, which all became waste or pollution finally, except we see a whole world of circularity. Are we ready to have our hands dirty? We heard at the beginning. The question is, what is your answer? We have heard ambitious plans from the Commission representative regarding waste as a resource and the circular dimensions and simplification of procurement processes. We have noticed that it is not only important how we are green, how green we are, but whether we can achieve these goals at all. The competitive compass was born with the recognition that no intervention can undermine Europe's competitiveness. Our first panel was excellent, in which we heard many local examples. All panel participants proved that we are building a business model in this public service which should be feasible. It must be easy to do the right thing, is the Swedish saying, which could also be the motto of the Commission's simplification intentions. By the way, I will take this further, so don't be surprised if it appears in official materials. We heard in the panel that no matter how small we are, the service should work. Public services must be transparent, and anyone must understand why we collect in separated manner. Local governments can act on their own. They can take more responsibility. Why should they wait for higher levels? I particularly liked the example of sustainable waste management of Porto. Products developed from scratch, waste management methods like that can be loved and followed by the people with very simple steps. Let's make the collection fancy, like the volley bin. If something is under our feet and we step on it, it has no value. I liked it very much. We have elevated the activity itself. It should be fancy. We have to elevate every act what we do in this regard. We heard the circular economy is about economy. Sometimes environment is forgotten. I would like to complete and correct the rest of the sentence, but it shouldn't have to. Every citizen needs clean air, soil, and clean water, so our task to regain our competitiveness with the environment in our head. We heard the average is not good for everyone. We need specific solutions, and I think the examples presented have all proved this. We will continue to decarbonize, but we need to fine-tune the steps, taking competitiveness into account. Circularity must be part of the economic development. It is much more difficult to guide our ship on this path now, said the representatives commission in the first part of the panel, because many disputes and options will influence the next steps of the coming years. We can expect the adoption of the Clean Industry Deal in a few weeks, which will bring future intervention on the path of circularity. We need to create a market for recycled, long-lasting products, dealing with the fact that the products from virgin raw materials are cheaper. But we Europeans must also create a market for products manufactured in Europe, and we Europeans must still support the European economy by that way. The plastic reprocessing requires a lot of energy, as we heard from the presidents of EuRIC. Energy price and other costs are not central to the waste management processes. The Clean Industry Deal also needs interventions to drive down energy prices. According to the president of FEAD, we cannot close our markets, but we must prioritize the market for recyclates. We need a worldwide exchange of raw materials because no country owns all the materials, but needs them. The circular economy serves to maintain our competitiveness, and since we do not have all the raw materials, it secures the future. Ensuring European sovereignty means one side to use secondary raw materials. Circular economy needs clean and green energy to provide these raw materials. I would like to emphasize from the questions that we need to put more emphasis on prevention. Thank you for that intervention. Materials that are not thrown away are the cheapest to support circularity. As we have explored today, translating goals into tangible outcomes requires more than just policy frameworks. We need practical, innovative, and inclusive solutions from people on the ground. There are some that we shouldn't talk about publicly, even though there is a demand for it. I'm thinking over the types of packaging materials and the fiber content of clothes. Thank you for the intervention. We can continue this with the coffee and outside, and I hope the next time the coffee will be served in the hall, so we can speak about that. By the way, EESC's freedom to take these issues forward, so I encourage you to include it in our debates, because we've got debates around these very difficult issues. One participant mentioned in the back row that we are running out of fossil supplies, and this is leading to an economic collapse. I have been thinking about that a lot, about that issue for 15 years a lot. In fact, for a global crisis, it's enough that we cannot increase the extraction of these resources. We don't need to depletion of these resources. There was a good chance that this had been happening for 10 years. It didn't happen because of the gas market replaced the oil market. But this was only a small time we can consume. We don't know how much time we've got left. I don't want to sound pessimistic, and I can be optimistic about that. Rather, I stay realistic. In other words, we have much less time than we can think. So we need to hold these dialogues to share existing initiatives and approaches and identify the challenges we encounter in this transition at local and regional level. And the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform offers a space for this. I invite you to go online and visit the platform websites and explore the numerous circular good practices and engage in dialogue with the layer of civil society. As we leave this room, let us commit to turning our words into action. Whether you are a policymaker, a business leader, or a representative of civil society, each one of us has a unique role to play. Let us continue to engage, to innovate, and to push boundaries to ensure that the vision we share today becomes a reality of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for your attention, your interaction, especially in the afternoon without necessarily having had coffee. You did really well. And I think we can just say, yeah, it's about elevating the circular economy in every sense of the word. We start with the bin in the kitchen that's actually in a cupboard. Okay, we can elevate the bin for a start. And then when we had the answers to the one piece of legislation, you know, it was about elevating out of landfill, going up the waste hierarchy, maybe not as far as waste prevention, but, you know, at least going away from landfill. And then also, obviously, the recognition of circular economy activities, you know, through the funding, through the taxonomy, this general valorization of this field of work, to elevate that as well. So there will be drinks served in the main room there, and we can continue our discussions. Thank you so much, and a big warm thank you to the 6 organizers, co-organizers, both from the public sector and the private sector. I think that's a very strong signal that has been sent to everyone that, you know, these kinds of dialogues are really important. So I think the 6 organizations that you see here on the bottom of the screens deserve a warm round of applause, and especially those hands who have been, you know, in the background, organizing everything, making it all happen. I can't name names, but I know there are usually a group of around 5 to 10 people who will have been extremely critical to making this event happen, so they deserve a warm round of applause.